Chapter 1373. They are brothers, Ruon Yaroju said in surprise. In the world of cultivation, blood brothers and sisters were very rare. Moreover, these two people had never communicated with each other before. Even their names were very different. How could she have imagined that they would have such a relationship? Even the cultivation techniques they cultivated and the auras they exuded were completely different. However, after careful observation, he found that the faces of these two people were indeed somewhat similar. Ren Aoyo snorted, "I have seen this kind of trick many times. If the two of them work together, no one will be their match in this mountain. The Zhuang Yuan will naturally be born between them, and the elder brother will naturally be number one. Junior brother Pai, although you can see that they are brothers, you are mistaken about who is the elder brother and who is the younger brother." Pai Yongqiu smiled, "Senior brother Ren, how do you know that I am mistaken? How do you know that the elder brother will not give way to the younger brother? Moreover, there are no fathers and sons in a casino, let alone brothers. In the end, it still depends on who is stronger and more ruthless." Le Tien clapped, "That's right, there must be a battle between these two brothers. They are brothers." Ruon Yaroju sighed, "What a greedy father and son will turn against each other." Pai Yongqiu laughed, "I am afraid you have never tasted what it is like to have brothers and sisters. Compared to strangers, only this kind of relationship is fought from childhood." Ruon Yaroju sternly said, "How can I not have brothers and sisters? The Wanxiang sect's senior brothers and sisters are my brothers and sisters." Le Tien and the other three looked at each other, then shook their heads and laughed. If these words were spoken by someone else, it would simply make one laugh their heads off, and it would be so pretentious that it was disgusting. However, she was able to make one feel warmth in one's heart. If she did not see him as an elder brother, why would she persuade him every time they met? Gambling was his lifeblood. If others dared to talk to him like this, he would have taught them a lesson long ago. Now, he had to worry that she would be cheated by others. If Leng Yuan and the other two did not see her as a younger sister, they would not have thrown down such a huge bet and gambled for her. Of course, they wanted to force her into the game and teach Le Tien a lesson, but she did not have to take any risks and had the opportunity to make a fortune. "So, senior brothers, please stop gambling." Ruon Yaroju took the opportunity to speak, completely ignoring the temptation of the green jade lots. She wanted to lead them to the right path. Pai Yongqiu laughed and sighed, "Sigh, I really can't stand you." A moment of carelessness, and a good gamble was almost dragged into the ditch by you. "I don't treat these guys as brothers, especially Le Tien. I can't wait for him to lose his underwear." Le Tien said, "When I win, I'll reward you with a few blackwood lots." Ren Royu said, "Then let's see who the brothers are. Junior brother Le, take a look at the black horse you chose. He's mining diligently. I'm still doing the same thing as these two." Ruon Yaroju sighed, "He wouldn't do such a thing. If it's the latter, then the outcome of the bet between me and junior sister Ruon has already been decided. Moreover, I believe that with his ferocity, those two brothers are definitely not his match. This time, we've really struck it rich." Le Tien placed his hands on the heavenly vision, earthly hearing, painting and rubbed it left and right. In an instant, the image focused on Li Qingshan. He was still walking unhurriedly in the cave, not mining. Instead of robbing people, he was singing at the top of his lungs. A loud and clear voice burst out from the heavenly vision, earthly hearing, painting. "The great river flows east, the stars in the sky join the Big Dipper." Le Tien's masked smiling face was also startled. Ruon Yaoju's eyes widened. "His singing?" Ren Royu mocked, "Afraid of walking at night, singing to boost your courage?" Pai Yongqiu's heart stirred, and he blurted out, "No, he's trying to attract the earth fiend beast." Le Tien shouted, "What? Is he crazy?" Monsters, this was the same word, but monsters and monsters were actually two different things. Monsters were all kinds of monsters. They could transform into human form, and they also had very high spirituality and intelligence. Monsters referred to those monsters with great strength but low intelligence, such as the mountain-cleaving monster. From a human's point of view, often, the two were mixed together, and the distinction between the two was not very clear. When monsters transformed into their original form and went berserk, they were not much different from monsters. Monsters also had the chance to develop intelligence and become monsters. But there were some very pure and true monsters. They had no intelligence at all, and were completely a special product of a special environment. They acted completely based on instinct. The most famous and the most powerful was the legendary void-swallowing beast. The void-swallowing beast was strong enough to destroy the world, and its power was not lower than a true immortal's. However, heavenly tribulations would never befall them. It was as if they were just a part of a natural phenomenon. Although they had terrifying power, they were similar to volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis. They only had some characteristics similar to living beings, but they were not real living beings. The Earth-fiend beast was such a monster. They would only be born in areas like the Yuan-fused mountain, where the Earth-fiend magnetic field was extremely strong. They would never leave, so they were called Earth-fiend beasts. Earth-fiend beasts used iron and stone as their bodies, and ate magnetic fields as their food. They did not know pain, fatigue, or fear, but they would attack all living beings indiscriminately. They usually only existed in the depths of the earth. It was as if heaven had discovered that the ordinary Earth-fiend magnetic field could not stop cultivators from exploring the edge of the world, so it specially arranged these terrifying guards. Legend had it that the strongest Earth-fiend beasts lived with the earth and slept in the deepest part of the earth. They could stop a true immortal. Naturally, there would not be such strong Earth-fiend beasts in the Yuan-fused mountain. Each of them had a moving magnetic field, and their bodies were indestructible. They could ignore almost all magical powers and spells, and were very difficult to deal with. Especially in an environment like the Yuan-fused mountain, even a human emperor would find it difficult. They were the biggest obstacle to mining magnetic fields, and they could not be killed. They were very troublesome. The Wanxiang sect's entrance exam, which was held once every 10 years, never paid attention to any mysterious tests or strange questions. As for whether you were strong or weak, kind or evil, or what characteristics you had, they did not care. Cultivators were all so busy. They did not have the time to carefully distinguish the strengths and weaknesses of a group of ants, much less to waste resources to specially set up an exam. The purpose of the exam was very clear. It was to let these cultivators use their lives to exchange for the precious resources that the sect needed. Those who succeeded would be accepted into the sect and become a part of the entire system. Those who failed would be cannon fodder. In any case, other people's children will never die. As the chief examiner this time, Le Tien merely used this foundation to turn this exam into an exciting gamble. He was prepared to make a lot of money from this. As for who lived and who died, who won and who lost, it did not matter at all. It was fine as long as the dark horse he had bet on was fine. But now that the situation had taken a turn for the worse, he could not sit still any longer. He shouted at the heavenly vision, earthly hearing painting, "Shut up." He did not care whether Li Qingshan could hear him or not. He was like an ordinary gambler who had lost and was desperately blowing at a sieve. Li Qingshan naturally could not hear him. Even if he heard him, he would not obediently shut up. Of course, he knew that the earth evil beasts were the most dangerous part of this exam. They had no sense of sight, smell, taste, or touch. Only their hearing was extremely sensitive. Therefore, the most important thing to do in the Yuan-ci mountain was to keep quiet. However, Li Qingshan did the exact opposite. He purposefully sang at the top of his lungs, as it would be far too foolish to keep yelling. He did it to draw over earth demon beasts, as earth demon beasts definitely possessed extremely pure origin magnets. However, he would have to put his life on the line. Ren Aoyou smiled and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Le, it seems that you, the Dark Horse, are going to die on the spot. You and Junior Marshal Sister Wan will not be able to continue the gamble. It can only be regarded as a draw." Le Tien held his head with both hands and rubbed his hair into a pile of messy grass. "I was wrong. I only saw that he was a desperado, but I didn't see that there was something wrong with his brain. I bet that he has never seen an earth evil beast before. Once Li Qingshan was killed by an earth evil beast, then no matter who won, he would definitely lose. No, he is not a bad person." Ruan Yarozhu recalled Li Qingshan's last warning, "If you follow me again, you will die." She finally understood it's not that he doesn't understand the danger. If he doesn't want to rob others, but wants to get first place, this is the only way. Just now, it's not to get rid of a burden, but to put his life on the line so that the people around him can go to a safer place. This is because I have a kind heart. He would rather risk his life than hurt others. He would rather be misunderstood and resented by others than not save others. No matter what, I can't admit that such a person is a bad person. Pai Yongqiu clapped his hands and said, Junior Marshal Sister 1, well said. This time, someone is really going to lose his underwear. It's a pity for this good person. TSK, as expected, good people don't live long. Hihi, I have all of them. I don't lower my head all the way. Accompanied by Li Qingshan's loud and clear singing, Le Tien shouted even louder, rolling on the back of the three-legged golden toad. Junior Marshal Sister, oh Junior Marshal Sister, you are so ruthless. Senior Marshal Brother only has this much. Ruan Yaozhu hurriedly waved her hand. Senior Marshal Brother, I don't want to win, just consider it a draw. She then said with some difficulty, I have a request. No. Le Tien suddenly stood up and said resolutely. Then, he returned to his mask-like smiling face, as if everything he did just now was just an act. I know you want to go in and save this kid. It's hard for you to break the sect's rules for him. If this was an ordinary test, it wouldn't matter even if you just let him pass. But this is a gamble of mine, Le Tien's. I hope Junior Marshal Sister can respect me. Leng Yuan, who had been silent all this time, said, Junior Marshal Sister, as long as I am here, the sect's rules cannot be broken, this is my duty. Of course, the WN Xiong sect's entrance test cannot be interfered with, but for a true disciple, such a trivial matter is of no importance. Perhaps only Ruan Yaozhu would feel troubled, she couldn't just watch a good person get killed like this. Le Tien said, if he dies like this, then I admit defeat, and both bets are considered my loss. But as long as he still has one breath left, the bet must continue. Hehe, this kind of bet is more interesting. At this time, after Li Qingshan finished singing one song, another came. His deep and magnetic voice echoed in the cave, who begs who, spring and autumn only listen to the command of heaven and earth. Don't bet, heaven's will is the highest. Chapter 1374. Fucking hell, the plot of reincarnation. Li Qingshan advanced triumphantly, one song after another. In the end, he was enjoying it. His voice was abnormally loud, causing the pebbles on the ground to tremble. His voice traveled along the cobweb-like cave, spreading throughout the entire Yuan Ci mountain. One by one, the earth-fiend beasts awoke from their slumber. He suddenly stopped in his tracks and pricked up his ears. He heard a strange sound in the darkness, like the hum of electricity. There was also the sound of rocks colliding with each other. It was rapidly approaching from the depths of the cave, getting closer and closer. Li Qingshan blinked his eyes, suspecting that he was seeing things. The monster that was running out from the depths of the cave. Its body was pitch black and rugged, like a crude stone beast statue, with a hint of postmodern style. It had extremely thick limbs and sharp claws. There were no eyes, ears, or nose on its head, but it had a huge mouth filled with sharp teeth. It was not surprising that an earth-fiend beast would look like this, but this guy was only the size of a mastiff, not even reaching Li Qingshan's waist. Its movements did not seem particularly fast and powerful, but as it got closer, the magnetic field became more and more chaotic. The small world in his body was slightly affected. He rubbed his chin, looks like this is an earth-fiend beast. This kid really has never seen an earth-fiend beast before. He really has never seen an earth-fiend beast before. Le Tien roared, slapping the back of the three-legged golden toad, producing the sound of metal clashing. The three-legged golden toad croaked, its eyeballs turning for a moment before closing again, ignoring its master's agitation. Pai Yongqiu smiled and said, such a small earth-fiend beast is indeed rare. I'm afraid it was just born from the earth-fiend magnetic mountain. If it was outside, it wouldn't be a threat to a nascent soul cultivator, but inside this divine magnetic mountain, no spells can be used. Li Qingshan's eyes narrowed. He released his aura, but the small earth-fiend beast was not afraid, nor did it show any respect. Instead, it ran even faster, its cries becoming louder. When it was 100 feet away, it pushed off with its hind claws and pounced with all its might. Its heavy body glided across the distance of 100 feet easily, and its sharp teeth bit towards Li Qingshan's neck. With a bang, Li Qingshan casually lifted his right leg and stomped the little earthly evil beast's head hard into the ground. The little earth evil beast struggled with all its might. Its sharp claws scratched the ground, leaving behind white claw marks. But in the face of Li Qingshan's terrifying strength, it was naturally useless. Pai Yongqiu said, his physique is not bad. Since he dared to lure the earth evil beast over, he must have some skills. However, I think he's in trouble this time. Li Qingshan felt that as long as he exerted a little more strength, he would be able to crush its stone head. However, this was the first time he had seen such a strange species. Moreover, he still had to fight against more earth-fiend beasts. Therefore, he squatted down and prepared to study it. A huge and ferocious shadow appeared behind him. It was more than 10 times larger than the small earthly fiend beast, but it floated silently in the air. It seemed to be weightless. It slowly opened its mouth, and each of its teeth was like a stalactite. It bit down towards Li Qingshan's head. Ruan Yaozhu's face was filled with anxiety. Even if he was a nascent soul cultivator, once his physical body was destroyed, his nascent soul would not be able to exist in the divine magnetic mountain for long. Very soon, it would be crushed by the earth-fiend magnetic mountain. She secretly made up her mind. Even if she had to offend her senior brothers, she would still rush into the divine magnetic mountain. No matter what, she had to save his life and at least protect his nascent soul. A good person should not be unrewarded. However, she did not know that Li Qingshan was not a true nascent soul cultivator. Although he cultivated the human's cultivation technique Extreme Emperor's record of world destruction, he did not have the time to completely transform the power of that demon heart into a nascent soul. Therefore, there was no way for his nascent soul to escape. Le Tian shouted, "Idiot, be careful behind you." Li Qingshan seemed to have heard his warning. He casually crushed the small earthly evil beast's stone head and turned around. "Oh, there's another big one here." He bit down with his sharp teeth and punched out. Boom! Rocks flew everywhere and hit the rock walls, causing sparks to fly. The big and small earthly evil beast's heads were crushed at almost the same time. Those stone heads that contained a large amount of metal were like clay chickens and pottery dogs under his punches and kicks. Le Tian and the others were stunned for a moment. This brat had delicate features and looked harmless, but his physique was actually this strong. Moreover, his reflexes were quick and his attacks were fierce. Even now, there was not the slightest hint of nervousness on his face. It was as if he was eating and drinking at ease. Pai Yongqiu praised, "You really have some skills." Ren Aoyou said, "This brat has never seen an earthly evil beast before. He's going to suffer a big loss." Before he finished speaking, a strange change occurred. The small earthly evil beast that had its head crushed hugged onto Li Qingshan's calf tightly. Another head stretched out from its neck and bit down on his leg. Li Qingshan's vision darkened. A huge sharp claw came pouncing towards him. Before he could put up a defensive stance, he was sent flying by the claw. Boom 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 boom. He broke several stalagmites in a row and smashed deep into the rock walls, burying himself under the rocks. Ruan Yaozhu cried out in alarm. Although nascent soul cultivators were strong, their bodies were far from being comparable to monster kings of the same realm. Especially under the influence of this yuan-fused mountain, they were even more fragile. If he were to take this claw head-on, his bones would probably be broken and his organs would be crushed. He patted the 9-colored deer and was about to rush into the cave to save Li Qingshan. However, a figure flashed in front of him. Lung Yuan blocked his way. His body was covered in cold air and formed an ice wall that was hundreds of meters tall. He seemed to be completely unaffected by the yuan-fused mountain. Ruan Yaozhu bit her lip. "Senior brother Lung, get out of my way," Lung Yuan said. "Junior sister, with me here, don't even think about taking a step into the cave." The 9-colored deer transmitted its voice. "Blockhead, oh blockhead, you're not cut out for fighting. I'm not much better. We definitely can't win against this Lung Yuan brat. It's over, my dark horse. Le Tien held his head as if he had lost his parents. Ren Chuyu smiled and shook his head. Give up, junior sister. It's too late for you to go in now. This brat has already been dismembered by the earth fiend beasts. Don't be sad, he can only blame himself for being too bold and inexperienced. Earth fiend beasts are all made up of rocks, so they have no weak points at all unless you can find the yuan-fused magnet in their bodies. However, the yuan-fused magnet could be in any part of the earth fiend beast's body, and it's said that it's constantly moving. If you want to kill an earth fiend beast, you have to destroy more than half of its body. Junior brother Le, prepare to pay up. Wait, look. Pai Yongqiu pointed at the heavenly vision, earthly hearing painting. He's still alive. The pile of rocks exploded, and Li Qingshan stood up again. His clothes were tattered, but there were only a few shallow claw marks on his chest. The little earth fiend beast on his calf bit desperately, but it couldn't even leave a mark. Haha, that's more like it. If they were all as small as you, how many yuan-fused magnets would there be? I'd have sung for so long in vain. Pai Yongqiu's expression kept changing. At this realm, to have such a physique, I'm afraid only eldest senior brother who cultivates the true dragon scripture and eldest senior sister who cultivates the black tortoise scripture can compare. As long as he doesn't seek his own death, there's nothing in the yuan-fused mountain that can threaten him. Ren Chuyu said, this brat either cultivates some special technique or has some inhuman bloodline. He's really well hidden. I can't even tell from his appearance. Le Tien, how did you figure it out? His comment almost revealed the secrets of the heavens. Li Qingshan had cultivated the 9 transformations of demons and gods and had various inhuman bloodlines, which was why he had such a strong physique. Le Tien laughed heartily. I can only tell that he's a ruthless person. I can't tell his technique or bloodline, but such a strong and fierce temperament can't be cultivated in a cave abode. As expected of the dark horse I've chosen. Well done. At this moment, Li Qingshan swept his leg horizontally and kicked the earth fiend beast that was pouncing at him away. The little earth fiend beast was also smashed into pieces. With a loud boom, the earth fiend beast's head was smashed again. It crashed heavily into the rock wall, and cracks spread all over its body. The rocks on the ceiling shattered and fell down. Among the flying rocks, Li Qingshan casually caught a walnut-sized small stone that was as black as iron, but it also shone faintly. It was the yuan-fused magnets in the little earth fiend beast's body. The first small piece, and the second big piece. Li Qingshan was in a good mood. He smiled faintly, looking more and more like a bright young man. The earth fiend beast didn't know fear or pain. It pounced at him again. Its terrifying figure and invisible magnetic field were the nemesis of cultivators. But this time, no one doubted the outcome of the battle. To be continued. Chapter 1375. It was impossible for a person to hide everything about themselves, especially when they were doing what they liked to do the most. Please go to Qiushu to read this book. Even though Li Qingshan felt that he was being watched, he did not plan to change his way of doing things. In a battle that he was used to, there was a kind of aura that came out of him. Other than Ruan Yaozhu, who was not good at fighting and was still a little confused, the other 3 true disciples could clearly feel it. It was the aura of someone who had experienced hundreds of battles and killed decisively. He must have gone through countless life and death battles to have this kind of confidence and calmness. They secretly hated themselves for being fooled by this harmless face. They looked at Le Tien in unison. You've made the right bet again. No matter what the final result was, this Li Qingshan was indeed the most qualified person to be the first. Le Tien gently stroked the 3-legged golden toad beside him and smiled. I have a feeling that I can win both of these bets. The 3 people's faces darkened. A man with this kind of aura must have had a lot of blood on his hands. How could he be a kind person? It would not be strange if he killed everyone in the Origin Magnet Mountain. Junior sister Ruan was probably fooled by that brat this time. If that's really the case, I won't forgive him. It's fine if Le Tien wins, but he dares to lie to junior sister Ruan. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Li Qingshan still did not know that because of a random bet, He was about to become enemies with the 3 true disciples before he even joined the nature sect. Ruan Yaozhu raised a fair finger and said seriously, "Senior brother Le, you can only win 1 round at most." Then let's wait and see." Li Qingshan completely pulverized the Earth Emanations beast. He did not defeat or kill it. Instead, he smashed apart every single piece of its body with his punch until he found the origin magnet. It was much bigger than the origin magnet in the small Earth Emanations beast's body. It glowed in the darkness. He played with it in his hand and closed his eyes to sense it. He was deep in thought. In this origin magnet mountain, the Sumeru ring could not be opened. He casually threw the origin magnet into the basket behind him. That was when he entered the cave. The 1,000 Elephant sect also gave everyone a pickaxe for mining. A strange buzzing sound came from the depths of the cave again. More and more Earth Emanations beasts were pouncing over. He slung the pickaxe over his shoulder and strode forward, singing loudly, "Go, go, go. Come with me, man." He had traveled all over Green Mountain, but he didn't grow old. A young man with lofty aspirations has no need to worry. The several successor disciples looked at each other. Although the tone of the lyrics was strange, there was an indescribable sense of carefreeness and heroism. Ren Aoyo said, "This kid is indeed very interesting. He has the potential to become a true disciple." Leng Yuan asked warily, "Can you tell who he is?" Ren Yuyu said, "How vast is the human world? There are also the ascenders of the 3,000 worlds. How can we see the origins of all of them?" Le Tien's mood was on a roller coaster ride. Her face was flushed with excitement, making her mask-like smiling face come alive. This is too exciting, too interesting. Right or wrong, success or failure, gain or loss, the unfathomable will of the heavens, and the unfathomable will of the human heart, everything was in this game. Junior sister Ruan. Have you ever felt the joy of gambling? Ruan Yaozhu pouted and shook her head. Forget it, you little monster. Le Tien rubbed her hands. Hee. Next, my good horse only needs to defeat these Earth Emanations beasts one by one, and it will be a success. If I kill a few more unlucky fellows and take their elemental magnets for myself, that would be even more perfect. Li Qingshan quickened his pace and sprinted through the winding mine. He did not hesitate to choose every fork. He encountered another 2 Earth Emanations beasts along the way, but he dealt with them in no time. There were 2 more elemental magnets in his basket. The biggest one was almost the size of a peach. He's going down continuously. Pai Yongqiu and the others could clearly see from the heavenly vision and earthly hearing that Li Qingshan was going down almost every fork. He had chosen to go down, which greatly violated the basic principle of exploring the elemental magnet mountain. The deeper one went into the elemental magnet mountain. The stronger the Earth Emanations magnets, the more Earth Emanations beasts there would be, and the more dangerous it would be. Hence, if one chose a path, they would try to go up as much as possible. They would eventually travel along the mountain ridge, where they would not encounter any Earth Emanations beasts. If they really could not find any elemental magnets, they would take the risk to go down. Most of the cultivators who participated in the trial were advancing along this path. Countless battles had already occurred. If this were any other time, this would be the highlight of this gamble. Perhaps they would even make a few small bets as an afterthought. However, right now, no one cared whether they lived or died. The true disciples' gazes were all focused on the lone figure running down. Ren Yuyu frowned and said, "What is he trying to do?" Leng Yuan said coldly, "He's courting death." Le Tien began to ravage her hair again. "Idiot, you already have an absolute chance of winning. Why are you still going down? Go back up." After sprinting for a while, Li Qingshan suddenly stopped and smiled. He was standing on a cliff, and in front of him was an empty space. An underground cave that was 1,000 feet tall and as big as 10 soccer fields appeared before him. It was almost impossible for such a large cave to appear in an ordinary mountain range. This was already the deepest part of the elemental magnet mountain. If he continued forward, he would be out of the mountain, and if he continued down, he would be deep underground. He leapt off the cliff. Specks of light flickered in the darkness. There were specks of light everywhere above his head and below his feet. They were like a resplendent starry sky, making him forget where he was, as if he was in a boundless void. These were the specks of light from the elemental magnets. They were half buried in the walls, and some were even exposed. It was possible to imagine how many oars there would be under the walls. However, under this dreamlike scenery, there was a great danger. When Li Qingshan entered the depths of the cave, the stars silently faded into the darkness, no longer shining. Even though he did not make a single sound, he had alarmed this silent land, as well as the huge beasts slumbering in the darkness. Even though the spirit turtle's premonition was almost completely ineffective, the chilling sensation was like needles stabbing into his skin, causing goosebumps to appear all over his body, secretly evoking the most primitive fear. The true disciples all stopped talking and stared fixedly at the heaven vision earth listen. They could see clearly that the craggy walls began to move, swallowing up the elemental magnets half buried in the walls. Sinister heads poked out one after another, looking in Li Qingshan's direction. This was not some elemental magnets, but the nest of the earth fiend beast. Li Qingshan arrived at the center of the nest. There was a strange rock that was 100 feet tall. He leapt onto the strange rock. Due to the angle, he did not see the elemental magnets that were almost the size of a watermelon embedded on the other side of the strange rock. They shone with an unusually bright light as they slowly sank into the depths of the strange rock. To be continued. Chapter 1376. Li Qingshan coughed at his fists. His coughs sounded like two claps of thunder in the silent cave. Ads. This site has changed to a new website, shorthand method, strawberry, rumble, rumble, rumble. There was a commotion in the darkness, and the sound of rocks colliding rang out incessantly, surging towards him like a tsunami. Standing on the high stage, Li Qingshan took a deep breath, opened his arms and said loudly, "Dear friends, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you?" His voice reverberated wildly in the cave, and what responded to him was a strange buzzing sound that swallowed his voice in an instant. It was as if a surging sea had surrounded him on this isolated island. Pai Yongqiu said with certainty, "He's crazy." Ren Aoyou laughed and said, "No wonder junior brother Le likes to bet on dark horses. This bet is really interesting. Even if you lose, it's worth it." Up until now, he'd already firmly won the first round, and once the Earth Evil Beast killed this fellow, victory in the second round would be within his reach. Le Tian smiled bitterly. "But it seems a little too exciting." Ruan Yaozhu's face was full of concern. "Now, I, Li Qingshan, would like to present a song to everyone. A man should strengthen himself." Li Qingshan bowed slightly, opened his right arm, and bowed. The smile on his face was wild and arrogant. The boulder under his feet was shaking. No, the entire cave was shaking. Li Qingshan furrowed his brows, puffed out his chest, and sang loudly, arrogant and haughty, "I laugh at the wave." Roar. The group of beasts roared and pounced at him from all directions. The strange stone under his feet cracked open into a ferocious mouth that could swallow an elephant. "My blood is as hot as the red sun." Li Qingshan leaped into the air and headed straight for the dome. The beasts collided with one another beneath his feet, and the deafening sound was like a landslide. There were sinister rocks and overlapping magnetic fields everywhere. It was as if he had fallen into the abyss of hell. Boom! A huge, hideous head broke through the dozens of Earth Evil beasts that were blocking its way, completely breaking free from the pull of gravity and biting towards Li Qingshan at an unbelievable speed. Li Qingshan flew into the air and slowed down. In this place, he could not use any of his magic power or demonic aura. Unless he disregarded the monitoring gazes and spread his phoenix wings, he would only end up in the mouth of this whale-like earth fiend beast. Guts as if made of iron. Li Qingshan turned around and stepped on the huge beast's teeth. In the moment the huge mouth closed, Li Qingshan's eyes widened. Once again, he leaped high into the air and reached the ceiling of the cavern. Then, he threw a punch at the black ironstone pillar that was over 100 feet in weight. Bone like diamond. The fist collided with the iron stone, producing the sound of metal clashing. With a bang, the stone pillar broke off from the dome and fell. It smashed towards the pursuing giant beast. Boom! The giant beast was smashed to the ground. Smoke and dust flew everywhere, and the cave shook violently. Li Qingshan made use of the counterforce to push himself to another hanging stone pillar. Just when he was about to repeat the same trick, a strong wind came from above his head. An earth-evil beast woke up from the rock wall of the dome and pounced on him, who was unable to dodge in midair. His singing was interrupted, and the man and the beast fell to the ground rapidly. Ferocious fangs filled his vision. He glanced at the ground from the corner of his eyes. Hundreds of earth-evil beasts of all sizes were waiting with their heads held high. Even if there were no such dangers, falling from a height of 100 feet, even a body of steel would break. No matter how strong his physique was, he was not invincible. Moreover, he was in a place like this, in a world like this. An intense fall would cause him to lose his ability to fight back for a short period of time. It would be hard for him to escape the fate of being torn apart by the beasts. Pai Yongqiu said with certainty, his finish. Perhaps, from the moment he entered the cave and challenged the beasts, he was destined to end up like this. This was the fate of those who overestimated themselves. No, he's still smiling. He's still smiling. Le Tianmo used the vision of heaven and hearing of earth and zoomed in on Li Qingshan's face. As expected, at the critical moment of life and death, he fell rapidly. The smile on his face became wilder and wilder, wilder and wilder like the wind. With an even louder voice, he continued to sing, breadth of mind, vision of 10,000 miles. He opened his arms and gave the earth-evil beast a big hug. He twisted his body in midair and took the upper position. Boom! Rocks flew everywhere. The ground cracked, and the earth-evil beast was smashed into pieces. With his black hair fluttering in the wind, Li Qingshan grabbed the third piece of primary magnet and threw it into the basket behind him. He laughed and sang, "I vow to work hard and be a good man." Roar! With a loud roar, he pounced on an earth-evil beast. He stabbed the tiger demon steel's heart into its chest and took out another primary magnet. The earth-evil beast immediately froze on the spot like a stone statue. To be a good man, I must work hard every day. The buzzing sound drowned out his singing. Dozens of earth-evil beasts covered his body. In the next moment, an even louder singing voice rang out. A hot-blooded man, hotter than the sun, he stepped on the ground with his bare feet. His majestic figure seemed to have transformed into a ferocious beast made of steel. His hands opened up like sharp claws. Roar! Ha! Hey! With a loud roar and a tiger demon steel's heart, an earth-evil beast froze. It was like a ferocious tiger fighting a pack of wolves. The pack of wolves was fierce, but the tiger's claws were even more deadly. The corpses of the wolves littered the ground, unable to approach. The true disciples were all dumbfounded. Pai Yongqiu said in disbelief, "How did he do it?" The most troublesome thing about the earth-evil beasts was that they had no vital points. Sometimes, they would have to continue fighting even after half of their bodies were destroyed. It was fine if they fought alone, but once they surrounded them and couldn't escape, it would be like falling into a stone mill. They would be crushed into pieces very quickly. However, Li Qingshan used the common black tiger steel's heart to subdue his enemies and forcefully carve out a path of survival. The only explanation was that he could instantly determine the position of the primary magnet in the earth-evil beast's body. However, even the human emperors present couldn't do this. Le Tien shook his head slowly. "I don't know. This dark horse is so dark that I don't even know how to explain it." He suddenly became excited and danced. "But, well done, Qingshan. Kill them and let them have a taste of your power." Ruan Yarozhu heaved a sigh of relief. The nine-colored deer muttered to itself, "Does this guy really have the Qilin bloodline? Looking at his fighting posture, it doesn't seem like it. It's as if he's a completely different person. It's terrifying. However, it doesn't matter. As long as he can help me win this round, I'll do anything." Ren Chuyu said, "Page, don't be happy too early. It's still unknown whether this guy can survive or not." This cavern was connected in all directions. It was like a huge sound system. The loud and clear singing, the loud sounds of fighting, and the chaotic magnetic field attracted all the earth-evil beasts on the primary magnet mountain. At every moment, earth-evil beasts swarmed into every cave entrance like a raging wave, turning this cavern into a huge arena. If he let his guard down for even a moment, he would die. Moreover, the strongest and most terrifying beast king in this lair hadn't been destroyed yet. Boom! Huge rocks flew everywhere, crashing everywhere and even smashing a few small earth-evil beasts. Li Qingshan raised his head and gazed over. All he saw was the earth-baleful beast that the strange rock had transformed into emerge from the pile of rubble. It was basically unscathed. Its limbs were completely unfurled, and its body was even larger than before. It strode towards him with heavy steps, and the cavern shook with each step. Suddenly, it stopped and shook its head. With a crackling sound, electricity surged in its mouth, ready to be unleashed. Even though the spirit turtle had lost its premonition, Li Qingshan still felt a chill run down his spine. With an iron mountain lean, he smashed the earth-evil beast in front of him into pieces. He couldn't be bothered to pick up the origin magnets anymore. He sprinted on the rock wall, wanting to circle around to the back of the Beast King. The Beast King slowly turned its head. The electricity in its mouth burned even more intensely, and it suddenly spat out. A white light flashed and filled his vision. The cavern was as bright as day. Li Qingshan leaped and was immediately slammed into the rock wall by a huge force. Boom! The rock wall cracked and collapsed, forming a deep pit. The painstakingly collected origin magnets scattered all over the ground. He lay at the bottom of the pit. His internal organs were shattered, and his whole body was numb. He couldn't move, and he could even smell the smell of roasted meat. After what seemed like a long time, he finally heard a deafening boom. He could still vaguely see the twisted trajectory left by the electricity in the air. He could have dodged it with that leap, but the lightning seemed to have locked onto him. It suddenly changed direction and struck him heavily. Qingshan! Le Tien cried out in pain, as if he was the one who had been struck. This was a technique that only an extremely powerful earth-evil beast could use. Even he wouldn't feel good if he was struck by it. Ruan Yaozhu's beautiful face turned pale, and she bit her lips subconsciously. Pai Yongqiu said, "The earth-evil beast's sense of hearing isn't actually hearing. In other words, it's closer to the nature of hearing. It's extremely sensitive to vibrations, and the real technique they use to lock onto their prey is the magnetic field. In such a narrow cave, it's impossible to dodge the lightning of the earth-evil beast. No matter how fast one's reaction is, it's useless. He's dead for sure." The horde of beasts surged like the tide, pouncing toward the immobile Li Qingshan. The Beast King's mouth once again gathered lightning. "Let Hai Tian gather energy for me." Li Qingshan slowly got up. His tongue didn't listen to him, and his singing was a little strange. The boundless earth was with him, and endless power flowed into his body through every pore. It was his only remaining innate ability, earth strength. In this deep cave, not only was he not affected by the earth-evil magnets, he became even stronger and more sensitive. He relied on this ability to sense the location of the origin magnets in each earth-evil beast's body. That was how he was able to kill them in one strike. A deep tranquility surrounded him, as if he was in his mother's embrace. He didn't feel any fear. He was the son of the earth. Once again, he leaped up and charged through the beast tide. "I'm going to create a new world for my dream." Stepping over the bodies of the earth-evil beasts, he pounced toward the ferocious mouth of the Beast King, diving into the boiling pool of lightning. Boom! Lightning exploded, and the picture of heavenly vision, earthly hearing was also covered in a vast expanse of white. The true disciples all widened their eyes. When the white light gradually faded, they saw the terrifying Beast King still in the posture of spitting lightning, standing motionlessly in the same place. However, there was no sign of Li Qingshan. Ruan Yaozhu asked in a trembling voice, Is he still alive?" Le Tien said, "Look." A charred human figure walked out of the Beast King's mouth, holding a huge origin magnets in his hand. It was shining brightly in the darkness. Li Qingshan laughed, revealing his snow-white fangs as he looked down at the horde of beasts. "Since you're a man, you should strengthen yourself." XH 118. Chapter 1377. Le Tien cheered and raised his fists. Qingshan, Qingshan, Qingshan. He bumped into the three-legged golden toad and shouted, "Invincible dark horse, invincible dark horse." Croak. The three-legged golden toad rolled its eyes and closed them again. Turned one Yaroju pressed her chest. "This is great." She was excited and could not calm down for a long time, thinking that this was probably the feeling of gambling that senior martial brother Le mentioned. Le Tien pointed at Pai Yongqiu and the other two and smiled. "You three, what do you think?" It was the smile of the winner of the gamble. Is he really not an Azura? Pai Yongqiu was confused. He had been through quite a few battles in the past, and he had seen many existences even more powerful than Li Qingshan. However, he had only seen Azura warriors with such fervent passion for battle and the lofty sentiments where they could cast their lives aside. After all, cultivators pursued longevity. They had to avoid pointless battles and put an end to fights that they had no confidence in winning. They already had a very, very high status and a very, very long lifespan to enjoy. They would never easily gamble everything they had, even if the risk was very, very low. The gamble with Le Tien was just a way for direct disciples to socialize and pursue excitement. No matter how bad the loss was, it was just a few green jade lots. There were always winners and losers in gambling. As long as one spent some time, they would be able to earn it back. However, Li Qingshan was not like that. He had ventured deep into the lair in the center of the mountain when he basically knew nothing about the earth-malevolent beasts. He had advanced triumphantly, risking the danger of being killed and fighting the beasts without the slightest sense of caution. His way of doing things did not resemble a cultivator at all. Such a fellow was simply unreasonable and could even be said to be extremely stupid. Did he not know that the slightest accident would ruin everything? The effort, the bright future, and his own life were all placed on the gambling table, waiting for fate to decide. Pai Yongqiu did not know that Li Qingshan had been through many dangers and life and death situations. The current situation was nothing out of the ordinary. If it wasn't for his courage and determination to disregard life and death, he would have already become a pile of bones. How could he have reached this step? He did not have a bright future to enjoy because the road ahead was even more dangerous. Soon, he would enter the depths of the demon domain, facing demon god Chongqi. Compared to that, what were a few earth evil beasts? If he had to avoid even this little bit of risk, then he might as well just slit his own throat and die. He had never thought of stopping, never thought of turning back, so he was willing to bet everything on it. He wanted to see if he had the luck to walk above the 9 heavens. If he really died on the way, then he should just accept his fate. At the very least, it wasn't because of cowardice and incompetence. Asuras don't know how to put on an act. Ren Aoyou still couldn't get over the fact that Li Qingshan behaved like an obedient child at the beginning. A hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. His gaze was no longer that of someone looking down at an insect trapped in a glass container from high above. Instead, he was treating him as a fellow daoist who was worthy of being treated as an equal. She even began to admit in her heart that it was her eyesight that failed to see through his true appearance. At this time, Li Qingshan jumped down from the frozen giant beast's mouth and fought with the other beasts, ignoring the pain. Quang Ji laughed arrogantly. The earth divine power provided him with an endless supply of energy, and as he gained a deeper understanding of the earth fiend beast's attack patterns, he was also becoming more and more skillful. The terrifying murderers were like a bunch of chickens and dogs in front of him. In the midst of his wild singing, it was as if a black whirlwind swept through the cave, crushing and crushing everything. Pai Yongqiu sighed. Why doesn't he go to the Azura path? Maybe he can become a child of destiny. He will immediately be valued by the generals of the Azura path. He will definitely have a better future than in the mortal path. Leng Yuan frowned thoughtfully, looking more and more unfathomable. Le Tien laughed. Maybe he is attracted by junior sister Ruan's charm. Anyway, I will definitely win this round. If he is not the top scorer, I will swallow this heaven-seeing, earth-hearing painting. Ha 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 ha. Ruan Yaroju blushed. Senior brother, don't talk nonsense. What charm do I have? Anyway, no matter how much you win, you will have to return it to the 3 senior brothers. 9 colored deer sighed. She knew it would be like this. She had never thought of winning the green jade lots from her senior brothers. Junior sister, don't you know what greed is? I hate people like you the most in gambling. Letienne smiled slyly. But I don't think I will lose. Besides, this is a bet between me and you. Don't tell me the 3 of them have the nerve to ask for compensation from you. Junior sister 1, are you looking down on me? Or do you want me to be looked down upon by Letienne? Ren Aoyo said unhappily. And little Le, don't speak too early. There is still a long way to go before the end of the bet. Ruan Yaoju pouted and lowered her head in silence. She seemed a little dull, but she was not someone who would be easily swayed by words. That's right. This Li Qingshan obviously did not prepare for this assessment. He knows very little about the Earth Evil Beast. He is completely relying on his strong physique to fight it. But after fighting the Earth Evil Beast, how much strength does he have left? But the 2 brothers are different. They are clearly prepared and do not care about the other nascent soul cultivators. They must have something to rely on. Moreover, they are waiting for the exhausted. Senior brother Le, the outcome is still unknown. Pai Yongqiu spoke frankly with assurance. How could they admit defeat before the results were out? But after witnessing Li Qingshan's ferocity, they did not have much hope. The 2 brothers had better not lose their minds. They could be considered lucky to have provoked a monster like Li Qingshan. Fine. I will let you 3 give up. Let's see what those 2 brats are doing. Letienne smiled as he turned the picture of Heaven's vision, Earth's hearing to the other side of the primal magnet mountain, locking onto the pair of brothers. He saw that they were busy guarding the only path out of the mountain, actively preparing something. It seemed like they were setting up a formation. However, in this essence-fused mountain, no matter if it was transcendence energy, arts, treasures, or formations, as long as it had the word transcendence in it, they would not be able to use it. Even though they were almost out of the mountain from where they were, and the influence of the earth-fiendish magnetism was beginning to weaken, ordinary formations would not be of much use. But when they saw the tools they were using to set up the formation, the eyes of the few true disciples lit up. Letienne was surprised and said, it's actually this formation. Haha, these 2 brats are indeed prepared. Not only was he not worried, he even smiled and said, not bad. There is a chance, a great chance. Ren Aoyo and Pai Yongqiu looked at each other and their expressions relaxed a lot. At least it proved that their eyesight was not too bad. The bet had only just begun. Ruan Yaoju frowned. She did not expect the 2 brothers to be prepared to this extent. They were obviously planning to rob them from the beginning. Such sinister intentions made her very unhappy, but she could not help but worry about Li Qingshan's safety. They might not dare to attack a nascent soul cultivator. Chapter 1378. After an unknown period of time, the belly of the mountain quieted down again. Broken statues of earth-fiend beasts of all shapes and sizes stood tall in the darkness. Li Qingshan sat cross-legged and meditated on the path of the Qilin. Because after a fierce battle, the Qilin transformation showed signs of weakening again. Is there a need to be so calculative? After all, the things I killed weren't living beings. He increasingly felt that the Qilin path was not as simple as he had initially thought. As long as he did some good deeds, his cultivation would rise rapidly. The Qilin took pity on the common people. However, even if he killed a peach tree and saved a group of beggars, it would still go against the Qilin path. Because human lives were not as noble as plants. Even if he did not have to sacrifice any lives, the people he saved would still have to devour other lives. The so-called doing good deeds and accumulating virtue were just the kindness and virtue of humans. Perhaps what he really needed to do was to follow the path of nature, forget right and wrong, walk in the air, and look down on the common people. The so-called path of extreme benevolence was actually so heartless. In the darkness, he suddenly opened his eyes and estimated the time. About a day and a half had passed. He had to leave the mountain within 3 days and hand over all the primary magnets he had obtained. Looking up, he could see that the entire cavern was filled with shining magnets. This battle was really fruitful. However, the basket used to store the primary magnets was gone. It was not easy to carry around so many multi-element magnets. He circled around the cave and suddenly came before the largest earth fiend beast statue. He cut open its chest and dug out pieces of black iron ores of high purity from within. After a round of kneading and stretching, they turned into iron bars. He used them to weave a huge iron basket. The work was very meticulous and did not look rough at all. He carried it on his back in satisfaction and picked up the primary magnets and threw them inside. A series of clanking sounds rang out. After collecting all the scattered primary magnets, he worked hard in the cavern to collect as many primary magnets as possible. This was to lay a solid foundation for the development of the Myriad Nature sect. After 2 days, the iron basket was filled to the brim. Only then did he carry the basket and walk with heavy steps. With the joy of a great harvest, he walked out of the mountain. "Big brother, this is really a great harvest." The fair-faced young master smiled and threw a piece of primary magnet into the basket beside him. However, it was caught by a hand in midair and thrown into another basket. The black-faced fiend said indifferently, "It's my turn this time." "Oh, I remembered wrongly. Ha 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 ha, I'm sorry. Between us brothers. There's no need to fuss over these small details." Although they hadn't dug out a single piece of primary magnet with their own hands, the 2 baskets were almost full. The black-faced fiend furrowed his brows. Up until now, none of the 3 nascent souls have shown up. This is the only way to get out of the mountain. The 3-day deadline is almost here. They will show up eventually. I'm worried that they're causing trouble inside. Some of them don't seem to want to pay the toll. Haha, with this Earth Fiend magnetic origin array here, no matter how many tricks they have, they're not a match for us. But if they knew what was good for them, there's no need for us to become enemies with them. Just let them go. They were as relaxed as if they were on a date. But they didn't know that there was a pair of eyes watching them through the stone wall. It was the female nascent soul cultivator. She had tied up her long hair and was wearing leather clothes and pants, looking very capable. Especially her eyes, which were extraordinarily bright. It was unknown what method she used. She could actually ignore the influence of the Earth Fiend magnetic origin array and make her eyes penetrate the rock. Of course, with this trick, she dug out a large number of primary magnets, which filled most of the baskets. Zhu Yingcai asked nervously, "Senior Su Tong, how is it? Are they still there?" Su Tong withdrew her gaze. "Yes." There was a sigh in the cave, and there was also a scolding. "These 2 bastards are really greedy. They've already robbed so many primary magnets, and they still won't give up." There were 100 or 200 people gathered here, and all kinds of voices gathered together. It was as noisy as a vegetable market. Someone warned, "Be quiet, be careful of attracting the Earth Fiend beast." Immediately, someone said disdainfully, "Coward, there's no Earth Fiend beast. It's all bluffing." Su Tong blinked her eyes, thinking of the song she heard when she ventured deep into the Yuan-Ci mountain the day before yesterday. The song came from the belly of the mountain under her feet. She was shocked at that time. She didn't expect that someone would dare to go so deep into the Yuan-Ci mountain and sing loudly. It was simply crazy. However, the song didn't stop for a long time. Instead, it became louder and louder. She guessed that it must be a nascent soul cultivator. The 2 robber brothers must have come here early to prepare. Also, the voice of an old Taoist couldn't be so young, so it could only be him. A handsome and gentle face appeared in her mind, making people involuntarily have a good impression of him. "I hope he hasn't been killed by the Earth Fiend beast. I'm afraid it's because of him that almost no one has encountered the Earth Fiend beast this time." As a result, the test became abnormally simple. Even the competition between people was reduced by a lot. Without the threat of the Earth Emanations beasts, they could go deeper into the mountains to dig out more origin magnets. There was no need to kill each other. Li Qingshan almost single-handedly carried all the difficulty of this assessment. If it weren't for the 2 brothers blocking the way, many people would have passed. Zhu Yingcai sat on the ground and lamented, "What should we do? We can't get out. If only nascent soul cultivators were as good as Senior Su Tong." All the cultivators begged, "Senior Su Tong, you must help us." Su Tong was disdainful. "A bunch of fools. Why should I help you? The two robber brothers' trick is too cruel. Even I am no match for them. How can I help you? If it weren't for the influence in the Wanxiang sect, I would have cheated you out of all your primary magnets and found another way out. Alas, I'm a female cultivator. If I enter the Wanxiang sect, I will definitely be on senior sister Chao Tianjiao's side. Female cultivators on senior sister's side have always paid attention to unity and friendship. If I leave a bad impression on them that I'm scheming, it won't be worth it. It's better to be a male cultivator. It's not a big deal to fight and do bad things. Maybe they will appreciate me more. Alas, being a woman is so troublesome." While she was struggling, heavy footsteps came from the depths of the cave. Bang! 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 The footsteps were getting closer and closer. All the cultivators immediately fell silent. Such footsteps could only be made by the earth fiend beast. There was no way to escape here. If he went forward, he would only run into the two brothers' trap. This time, there were wolves in front of him and tigers behind him. He was in a dilemma. Zhu Yingcai sat up and asked anxiously, Senior, what should we do?" Su Tong's eyes were shining. She suddenly opened her eyes wide as if she had seen something incredible. How is this possible? Chapter 1379. Li Qingshan lowered his head and bent his waist deeply. His well-defined muscles flowed like water, and the iron basket on his back was many times larger than the basket issued by the nature sect, making him look like a big snail crawling slowly. However, this was just an illusion. Every step he took was more than 3 meters, and his bare feet deeply stepped into the ground before quickly pulling up, leaving a series of deep footprints. The brilliance of the prime magnet shone through the gaps of the iron basket, as eye-catching as fireflies in the dark. How could he collect so many prime magnets of such high quality? Su Tong felt that she had cheated in this assessment, and she could not be compared to the two shameless brothers. She really could not imagine how he did it. Suddenly, she thought of the song and the roar coming from the belly of the mountain, and a thought came to her mind. No way. Did he collect so many prime magnets by killing earth beasts? With a smile on her face, she walked forward and bowed. "Fellow Taoist, please wait." Under the awe of the crowd, Li Qingshan slowed down but did not stop. "What can I do for you, Taoist?" Su Tong said solemnly, "Taoist, please be careful. There are evil people blocking the way. Do you remember the two nascent soul cultivators? One was a pretty boy, and the other was a short black man. They were brothers, and they set up the Earth Fiend magnetic formation to rob cultivators who passed by. Many people have been killed." Li Qingshan was surprised. Earth Fiend magnetic formation. There is such a formation. Alas, the effect of this formation is the same as the Earth Fiend magnetic formation, and it can greatly weaken the enemies who enter the formation. The two brothers are really ingenious, using this formation to resist the influence of the Earth Fiend magnetic formation. As long as you are within the range of the formation, you can almost completely recover your strength. I'm afraid no one in this mountain is a match for them. Su Tong looked worried. She wanted to persuade Li Qingshan to ally with her, if her guess was right. If her guess was right, then his strength was extremely powerful, and a powerful ally was much more useful than a group of useless people. Zhu Yingcai's mood was somewhat complicated, but he still stepped forward to complain. These two fellows are really too despicable. They stole the source magnet that everyone worked so hard to dig up. They're exactly the same as those mountain bandits. You must help us. Li Qingshan glanced at him indifferently. Since the rules allow it, then I'll do it. There was nothing wrong with that. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. He quickened his pace and moved forward, deciding to follow the Chilean's way and not meddle in other people's business. Hey, fellow cultivator. Su Tong stomped her foot. He hurried to catch up. Outside the Yuan-Ci mountain, Wan Yarozhu frowned slightly. This was different from how Li Qingshan behaved in White Stag. Was the human heart really that complicated? The 9-colored deer was even more anxious. Bastard Li Qingshan, Where is your sense of justice when you invited those beggars to eat? Where's your courage to not fear the myriad appearance sect? Letienne smiled and said, "What do you think, junior sister Juan? He's not as kind as you think, right? The human heart is unpredictable. The outcome of this gamble of good and evil is hard to predict. If he doesn't do evil or good, then it'll be a draw. I trust him," Ruan Yaroju said. Letienne licked his thin lips and said, "I really can't wait to see the final outcome." Ren Aoyo and Pai Yongqiu clenched their fists. "I'm begging you, leave one for me and let me pass," the middle-aged man cried. He knelt on the ground and begged the two brothers. He came here from another cave and ran into the trap. All the source magnets on him were swept away. The pale-faced man smiled and said, "Brother, what do you think? Why don't we give him a piece? I feel bad seeing him cry." The dark-faced man said fiercely, "Brother, since when did your heart become so soft?" "Sigh, I'm a compassionate person." "That's strange." They were like cats that had caught a mouse, playing around with a relaxed expression on their faces. It was just to relieve their boredom. When the heavy footsteps rang out, they all widened their eyes, gazing at Li Qingshan in disbelief as he walked over from afar. The pale-faced man murmured, "It's a lie." The dark-faced man immediately became vigilant and a dangerous cold light flashed in his eyes. Li Qingshan didn't even look at them. He didn't even change the frequency of his footsteps. He walked over step by step and stepped into the Earth Fiend source magnet array, continuing to move forward. He lowered his head as if he didn't see anything, but he thought, if they take the initiative to find trouble with me, of course I have to protect myself. That doesn't violate the Qilin Dao. The two brothers quickly exchanged glances. They had no intention of becoming enemies with any nascent soul cultivators, but the number of primordial magnets in the iron basket had already firmly secured the first place. Even if they gathered all the primordial magnets they had plundered, they still wouldn't be able to compare to it. Their plan was completely ruined. However, they didn't dare to act rashly. How could a person who could get so many source magnets be easy to deal with? Just by carrying such heavy source magnets and having a strong body that could still move forward steadily, he was not easy to deal with. Most importantly, this man seemed to have an invisible momentum that made them not dare to be enemies with him easily. Should they act or not? In an instant, Li Qingshan had already arrived in front of them, and a fierce battle was about to break out. The middle-aged man forgot to continue begging for a moment and looked up at Li Qingshan blankly. The cultivators behind him, led by Su Tong, were also extremely nervous. Even the few true disciples were staring at the heavenly vision, earthly hearing painting. In an instant, all eyes were focused on Li Qingshan. The result of the assessment and the winner of the bet would be revealed at this moment. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Li Qingshan passed by the two brothers and continued to move forward, gradually getting farther and farther away. Su Tong curled her lips, and there was a sigh behind her. All the cultivators who wanted to take advantage of the chaos to sneak past were disappointed. The true disciples also had different expressions on their faces. Letienne showed a proud smile. He had at least won one of the two bets, and it was still a big profit for him. Ruan Yaroju sighed in her heart, but it had nothing to do with the outcome of the bet. Alas, this is the wisest choice. Forget it, how can I ask others to do the same as me? As long as they don't use violence indiscriminately, it is already commendable. But it was difficult to hide the disappointment in her beautiful eyes. Ren Aoyo and Pai Yongqiu couldn't help but shout at the heaven-seeing and earth-hearing painting, "You two useless things, attack me." The expressions of the two brothers were constantly changing. They seemed to be communicating with their divine thoughts, but they were caught in an argument and let the footsteps gradually fade away. Li Qingshan looked up and saw a flash of light in front of him. The exit was already in sight. He was definitely the champion of this assessment, but he was a little annoyed, as if there was a thorn in his back and a fishbone stuck in his throat. The middle-aged man's pleading voice rang out again. He suddenly stopped, and the iron basket behind him fell to the ground with a loud bang, stirring up a cloud of dust. Against the light, he straightened his body, turned around, and pointed at the two brothers. "Hey, you, give him back the Yuan magnet." Chapter 1380. The two brothers looked at each other, then turned around and looked at Li Qingshan with unkind expressions. Big brother, did I hear wrong? Brother, did I hear it wrong? Did I hear wrong? Is there something wrong with his head? Yes. Haha, there's a path to heaven, but he chose to barge into hell. That's right. For a moment, killing intent filled the air. Outside the Yuan-fused mountain, Wan Yaozhu's eyes lit up again. Her heart was filled with relief, and she smiled at Letian as if to say, "See, I didn't choose the wrong person." Ren Aoyou smiled. "Junior brother Le, you've already lost one of these two bets." At this point, good and evil had already been separated. Unless one was distorting the truth and twisting words to force logic, no one could say that such an action was not a good deed. The people present were all people of status, so they naturally wouldn't do such a thing for a bet. Pai Yongqiu smiled. And he's about to lose the second round. Two nascent soul cultivators aren't that easy to deal with. Letian scratched his head. That doesn't make sense. What's wrong with this kid? This is acting bravely, how is this crazy? Ruan Yaozhu was a little worried about Li Qingshan. Senior brother Le, let's go to the other side of the mountain. Don't worry, he won't die anytime soon. Even if he dies, he deserves it. There's a price to pay for being a good person. Letien's words made Ruan Yaozhu feel dissatisfied. She sighed again. Yes, there's a price to pay for being a good person. I hope you'll be safe. Although Li Qingshan referred to himself as the Hero King, he really was not standing up for a just cause this time. Instead, he was truly going crazy, as he was in a very bad mood. The Chilean transformation was just far too difficult to please. That wouldn't work either. It was even harder to deal with than the Phoenix transformation. Otherwise, he couldn't be bothered to meddle in other people's business. Cultivators weren't little beggars who were prepared to be killed when they came out, let alone being robbed. That cowardly appearance wasn't worth his help. This was all because he was holding back his resentment. The two brothers became ready-made punching bags, and they walked up without saying a word. Kill him. The black-faced fiend pulled out a black dragon-headed walking stick from behind his back. It suddenly lit up with a dazzling red light, turning the dark cave crimson. With a deep dragon roar, raging flames gushed out and burned towards Li Qingshan. The pale-faced man waved his sleeves and a folding fan fell from his sleeves. With a swoosh, he unfurled his fan, and the profound runes drawn on it lit up one after another as he fanned with all his might. The gale arrived first even though it was released later. The wind increased the intensity of the fire, sweeping up the raging flames and turning them into a fire tornado. It filled up the entire cave and whistled over. The two of them didn't make a move, but once they did, they joined forces and attacked with all their strength. Li Qingshan was unable to dodge and was instantly engulfed by the fire tornado. The two brothers smiled coldly. He really didn't know what was good for him. He didn't even have the most basic protective chi in the origin magnetic mountain. He was instantly roasted into a pig, and even his nascent soul couldn't escape. Su Tong wanted to take advantage of the chaos to sneak out, but she was forced to retreat by the heat wave. The cultivators behind her were even worse. They were almost rolling and crawling, and their eyebrows and hair were burnt. The rocks in the cave were burned red and melted into magma. Impossible. Even without the influence of the origin magnetic mountain, the cultivators who set up the formation still had the advantage of the terrain. Coupled with the advantage in numbers, it was impossible for Li Qingshan to win. I'm afraid he's already dead. The fire illuminated the heavenly vision and earthly hearing painting red. The scene in the mountain couldn't be seen clearly. Ruan Yaozhu's heart skipped a beat. Is it true that good people don't get what they deserve? Ren Aoyou and Pai Yongqiu were relieved. Once Li Qingshan was dead, Letian would definitely lose. There was a trace of regret and doubt in their hearts. How could such a man die in such a place? However, they saw Letian standing on the side with a smile. Hey, Letian, your dark horse is going to be eliminated. Letian said, you don't have to look like that. I bet that he won't die here. Ruan Yaozhu was surprised. Why? Because some people can win every bet, such as me. Do you think it's all luck? It's about time, brother. The fair-faced man fanned the fan with all his might. Burn again. The black-faced man used all his strength to drive the dragonhead crutch. For some reason, he felt uneasy. I'm afraid he's already been burnt to ashes. Ah. The fair-faced man had just revealed a smile when he suddenly turned pale with fright. With a roar, Li Qingshan jumped out of the flames. His whole body was roasted red, but he was not injured at all. His strong and beautiful body looked like it was made of red copper, or like a blazing red tiger. He pounced on the fair-faced man and knocked him to the ground. Whirlwind protection. The fair-faced man had just shouted these 4 words when he was punched in the face. If it wasn't for the whirlwind, his brain would have burst. Even so, he was already scared out of his wits. Li Qingshan was about to give a second punch when a whistling sound came from the back of his head. Without looking back, he grabbed the dragonhead crutch and pulled it hard. Come here. The black-faced man could not help but stagger forward. His throat was tightly clutched, and his dark face was full of horror. The fair-faced man hurriedly urged his magic power, but before he could cast a spell, he was kicked in the stomach. His stomach turned upside down, and his internal organs felt like they were being torn apart. He almost vomited bile. The black-faced man wanted to use the dragonhead crutch to fight back, but he was hit on the head by the crutch. He felt dizzy and saw stars. Li Qingshan punched and kicked left and right, as if he was hitting a sandbag. Whoever dared to resist, he would beat them up. Of all things to learn, you have to learn how to rob. Heh! Who's crazy? Who broke into hell without the door? The 2 brothers screamed again and again, as if they were mortals without any power to resist. Fellow cultivator, please spare me. Fellow cultivator, please spare me. The fair-faced man screamed. Of course, at this time, his face was already swollen, and there was a big footprint on it. Li Qingshan was also ruthless, specifically hitting the fair-faced man's face. The black-faced man was a little tougher, and asked in surprise, Why are you fine? You still dare to ask? Li Qingshan hit the crutch again. They were almost out of the mountain, and the influence of the earth-fiend magnetism field on the small world inside his body was not that strong. An ordinary nascent soul cultivator would die without a doubt if they were hit like that in this kind of environment. However, he had the bloodline of gods and devils. The tiger demon was in charge of wind, and the phoenix was in charge of fire, so his resistance was extremely strong. Once he got close, these 2 brothers were not even as good as this earth-fiend beast. At least the earth-fiend beast did not know pain, and it had no vital points, so it would not be scared out of its wits. It was not that they were timid, but if their physical bodies were destroyed in this essence-fused mountain, and even their nascent souls could not escape, it would be a dead end. Therefore, in the end, Li Qingshan no longer needed to specially suppress them. After they realized that Li Qingshan had no killing intent, they simply lay on the ground and took the beating, afraid that if they put up any more resistance, it would instead arouse the killing intent in Li Qingshan's heart. Although Li Qingshan did not want to kill, he was a vengeful person. How could he let them off so easily? He grabbed one with his left hand and the other with his right, like a naughty child throwing his temper and grabbing 2 ragdolls, throwing and beating them randomly. As he beat them, he asked, I'm using virtue to win people over. Let me ask you, are you convinced? I beg you, stop beating us. We're convinced. We're convinced, all right? The onlookers were all dumbfounded. The 2 arrogant brothers were being beaten up in the earth-fiend magnetism field formation that they had set up themselves. Other than screaming, they were begging for mercy. If it were not for the roasted red rocks still showing the power of the fire tornado just now, they would have suspected that the 2 brothers were pretending to be nascent soul cultivators. Su Tong blinked her eyes. In that case, he really went deep into the mountain and killed the earth-fiend beasts to get the multi-element magnetism field. They were both at the 3rd level of the heavenly tribulation, so how could there be such a big difference between them? Le Tien clapped his hands and said, What did I say? What did I say? Pai Yangqiu said, Where the hell did this kid come from? Even the eldest senior brother couldn't have come out unscathed with that kind of cultivation and under that kind of circumstances. Ren Chaoyu frowned and suddenly shook his head with a smile. I lost this round. But at least I helped junior sister Ruan win this round. Ruan Yarozhu said. No, I didn't. Ren Chaoyu waved his hand. No need to say more. I said you won, so you won. Pai Yongqiu said with a smile. Junior sister Ruan, just admit it. It's better for you to win than for Letian to win. Let's see how he can boast in the future. When it comes to understanding people's minds, you're still better. Chapter 1381. The one you chose. Letian laughed. That old Daoist wants to win against my super dark horse. Ren Aoyou and Pai Yongqiu also laughed disapprovingly. For the past 3 days, they had been paying attention to the old Daoist. He was just an honest miner and was even worse than the female cultivator named Su Tong. They could not see any possibility of him winning the championship. They just thought that Leng Yuan was blinded and stopped paying attention to him. Leng Yuan said, "You wouldn't say that if you knew what technique he was practicing." Li Qingshan exhaled viciously and tossed aside his 2 brothers who had been beaten half to death. He snatched their arcane treasures rudely and picked up the 2 baskets of origin magnets they had stolen. He was just about to make his way out of the cave. "Fellow cultivator, please wait." Li Qingshan turned around and saw an old Daoist with white hair and a youthful complexion walking out from the other side of the cave. He frowned. "What is it?" The old Daoist said politely, "Can you please put down these primary magnets?" Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows and raised the 2 baskets of primary magnets in his hands. "Are you talking about these?" No, there's also that one over there." The old Daoist pointed at the iron basket in the distance. Li Qingshan shook his head and sighed. Difficult. Fellow cultivator, you mentioned 3 difficulties in a row. Are you unable to give up these 3 baskets of primary magnets? How about this? I'm not an unreasonable person. I'll exchange my basket with you. The old Daoist put down the basket on his back. It was only half filled with primary magnets of average quality. It's just some broken stones. It's not that difficult to give them up. What's the purpose of that? The world is full of bastards like you. It's too damn difficult for me to be a good person. Li Qingshan's roar shook the cave. It was filled with accusations against the cruel world and a trace of uncontrollable killing intent. The old Daoist's expression changed slightly. He laughed. "If you don't want to live in this world, I can help you." A cold light flashed in his eyes, and his tall and thin body suddenly swelled up. His bulging muscles stretched his loose Taoist robe to the point that it was about to split open. In an instant, he became a muscular man, and even his expression became ferocious. He casually punched the rock wall beside him. The rock wall suddenly caved in, forming a huge pit. The entire cave trembled with the loud noise. The technique that I'm cultivating is called the essence snatching, qi concealing, fetus concealing technique. It can restrain all the blood and qi in one's body and nurture one's nascent soul like a placenta. However, when it's needed, it can also transform all the mana in one's nascent soul into blood and qi, making one's body indestructible and powerful. Have you ever heard of it? So it's this technique. Isn't this a demonic technique? Ruan Yarozhu frowned. This essence-stealing qi concealing embryo technique was not as simple as just restraining one's own blood and qi. It also seized the blood essence of others and turned it into a placenta to nourish the golden core and nascent soul. It was even said that there were some people who specially trained on infants who were not yet 1 year old. Not only were they easy to refine, but they could also obtain innate spiritual qi. It was extremely cruel and vicious. Letian praised, "Senior Marshal Brother Leng really has good eyesight. This technique is all about concealing one's essence qi. It can't even fool us." Junior Marshal Sister Ruan. These loose cultivators from small sects don't have the 10,000 heavenly book to choose from like us in the myriad sect. We really can't be too particular about techniques. Ruan Yarozhu remained silent. This old Taoist only cultivated demonic techniques, but even his temperament was problematic. He was even more righteous than the 2 brothers when it came to robbing others. However, the myriad sect was all-inclusive and had never been strict when it came to accepting disciples. This was not something that she could change. But strangely, She was no longer worried about Li Qingshan. However, he no longer worried about Li Qingshan. Instead, he felt a strange sense of confidence. He believed that Li Qingshan would definitely teach him a vicious lesson. After being provoked again and again, Li Qingshan's killing intent was boiling. He silently circulated the Qili's strategy of longevity. He licked his slightly dry lips and asked the two brothers who were pretending to be dead, "Do you want your weapons back?" The two brothers opened their eyes and nodded. Losing the prime magnet was already a huge loss. If they lost their magic treasures as well, then they would really suffer a huge loss. "Kill this muscular old Taoist for me." Li Qingshan threw the fan and walking stick back into their hands. These two broken magic treasures were nothing in his eyes. He was afraid that if he continued to fight, he wouldn't be able to hold back the killing intent in his heart. That would really damage the Qili's way. He sat on a rock at the side and said, "Hurry up." The two brothers took the magic treasures and jumped up. Although they were beaten very badly, Li Qingshan showed mercy and didn't harm their lives. For nascent soul cultivators, as long as their nascent souls weren't damaged, physical injuries weren't a big deal. The fair-faced young master's face was swollen. He rubbed his hands together with a fawning expression and said, "Fellow Daoist, no, senior. Can you be magnanimous and let us brothers go? Return the prime magnet to us as well? We brothers are willing to follow you." Li Qingshan simply closed his eyes and said, "I'll count to 3. The two brothers felt a chill in their hearts. "Old Taoist, hurry up and accept your death." The muscular old Taoist took a step back. He didn't expect Li Qingshan to have this move. He was facing 3 nascent soul cultivators at once. Moreover, the Earth Fiend magnetic array was still there. He instantly felt that the situation was not good. "Then I can only deal with the 2 of you first." The muscular old Taoist recalled the tragic state of the 2 brothers when they were beaten up by Li Qingshan and became even more confident. He crushed the rocks and took big strides, charging forward. The 2 brothers waved the walking stick and the fan. Strong smoke billowed and strong winds blew. The wind fueled the fire, and the fire fueled the wind. They repeated the same trick and another fire dragon rushed toward the muscular old Taoist. The muscular old Taoist was in a wide cave. Unlike Li Qingshan, who was blocked in a narrow passage, he had more space to dodge. There were also many rock pillars that could be used as rocks. However, he recalled what he saw just now. Li Qingshan rushed out of the sea of fire unscathed. He was sure that the power of magic would be greatly weakened in the prime magnet mountain. His current physique was definitely not weaker than Li Qingshan's. There was no reason that he couldn't do what he could. As long as he got close, the 2 brothers would be at his mercy. Therefore, he held his breath and rushed into the sea of fire without hesitation. The 2 brothers were shocked. They also recalled the same scene and felt a little nervous. They were afraid that someone would rush over to hold them down and beat them up again. Just as they were worrying, they suddenly heard the muscular old Taoist scream. The muscular old Taoist was rolling on the ground from the fire. His tight Taoist robe and his hair were all burned. All of them were burned to a crisp. The strong winds were like countless sharp blades cutting down, like a death sentence. No, it was worse than death by 1,000 cuts. Although his physique was strong, it was obvious that he did not have the bloodline of the Phoenix demon or the Tiger demon. He did not have the willpower to endure the torture and rush through the sea of fire. Li Qingshan opened his eyes and took a look. "You even have muscles in your head. Even if I can't do it, you can do it." The 2 brothers were instantly relieved. They used even more effort to activate the wind and fire. It condensed into a fiery snake that danced wildly and tightly wrapped around the muscular Taoist priest, not giving him any chance to escape. Listening to his blood-curdling screams, the Taoist priest's face was filled with cruel pleasure. It was obvious that he was venting his anger. Even the true disciples did not expect that what they thought was a life-and-death battle would end in such a ridiculous way. Seeing that victory was certain, Le Tien laughed. "Junior brother Leng, I have to admire your sharp eyes. This old Taoist is also a vicious person. Unfortunately, his brain is not very good. In the end, my dark horse is still smarter." Lung Yuan's face seemed to turn colder. Originally, with the old Taoist's essence stealing qi concealing embryo technique, he could have easily defeated the two brothers even if he threw a stone from afar. He might even have been a match for Li Qingshan. Unexpectedly, he was stupid enough to use a body of flesh and blood without the protection of vital energy. It was extremely stupid to resist the spell cast by two nascent soul cultivators. Pai Yongqiu said, "Senior brother Le. Congratulations, you finally won a round." Le Tian's smile faded a little. "Anyway, I did not lose. I did not expect junior sister Ruan to be the biggest winner this time." "As expected, newbies are more lucky," Ruan Yarozhu said seriously. "Senior brother Le, I did not want to win. I just wanted to tell you that the human heart is not as bad as you think." Le Tian raised his hands in surrender. "Fine, fine. The winner takes all. Whatever the winner says is right." The two brothers burned the muscular old Taoist until his entire body was charred black and he was half dead. His muscles withered again and the cave was filled with the smell of roasted meat. Li Qingshan said, "All right, spare his life. The magnets on him are yours." The two brothers' eyes lit up and they thanked him profusely. The pale-faced man said tentatively, "Fellow Taoist, this earth fiend magnetic formation is not easy to obtain. Why don't we guard it for a while longer? We are willing to give you half of the harvest." Li Qingshan glanced at him indifferently. "Then why should I give you half?" The pale-faced man said embarrassedly, "You are right, you are right." At this moment, Su Tong came forward and praised, "Fellow Taoist, you are brave and resourceful. No wonder you are not afraid of danger. I admire you." Li Qingshan said, "It's just a small matter. It's not worth mentioning." It may be a small matter for fellow Taoist, but for them, it's a matter of life and death. Su Tong waved her hand behind her. Most of the cultivators were still immersed in the tragic scene of burning a living person. When they came back to their senses, they thanked Li Qingshan one after another and carefully bypassed the charred figure. Zhu Yingcai hid in the crowd with a very complicated mood. Li Qingshan did not notice his existence at all. Li Qingshan picked up the metal basket on his back again and carried a basket of origin magnets in each hand, striding out of the mountain. A beautiful female cultivator accompanied him as over 100 cultivators followed behind him in a dense mass. It was rather like a leader inspecting them. The two brothers were left behind to guard half a basket of magnets. They looked at each other in dismay and became vigilant. Now Li Qingshan was naturally the first champion of this assessment, and Su Tong was the second, so there was only the third. "Brother, we are just servants. With our cultivation, it's not difficult to be promoted from servants to servants. So let's not hurt our friendship. Brother, what you said is reasonable. Then let me do it this time." The black-faced man grabbed the basket on his back fiercely. The pale-faced man held the other side tightly, and the basket was suspended in the air. "Brother, you are wrong. It has always been the elder brother who gives way to the younger brother. There is no reason for the younger brother to give way to the elder brother. The order of seniority, half each." Just as the two brothers were arguing, Li Qingshan was about to walk out of the cave. The white light in front of him was getting brighter and brighter, and the moist sea breeze poured into the cave with a slightly salty smell. Chapter 1382. The huge three-legged golden toad was lying on the beach, glowing with a golden light under the sun, which suddenly attracted everyone's attention. Li Qingshan opened his eyes wide and saw a familiar figure. It was the great princess who was sitting on the nine-colored deer. She looked back and nodded with a smile. She seemed to be in a good mood. Could it be that she came specifically for me? My charm is really hard to resist. Li Qingshan thought in a very narcissistic manner. He recalled the feeling of being watched and thought back to everything he had done in the Origin Magnetic Mountain in a hurry. He discovered he had not done anything outrageous, so he could not help but let out a sigh of relief. After all, he had received a good person card from others. Even he didn't want to disappoint those who had good intentions for him. In addition to her and Le Tian, there were 3 strange men. Judging from their demeanor, they must be direct disciples with the cultivation of human sovereign realm. He didn't understand why a small entrance examination could attract so many big shots. Moreover, several people's eyes were almost all focused on him. This was not his illusion. Su Tong looked at him in amazement and thought, are these true disciples all here for him? She involuntarily kept a distance from him and fell behind. This was a big misunderstanding. Li Qingshan was the focus of two bets at the same time. With his extraordinary performance, he won the appreciation of several direct disciples. Naturally, the gambler's eyes were full of meaning. With Li Qingshan in the lead, a group of people meandered to the beach and stood in front of the three-legged golden toad. Congratulations to everyone for passing the entrance examination and becoming a member of the Wanxiang sect. Le Tien stood high on the back of the three-legged golden toad and opened his arms with a smile. Now, please put the yuan magnetic iron into the mouth of the three-legged golden toad. The toad opened its mouth with a thunderous sound. Li Qingshan was the first to step forward and put 3 baskets of yuan magnetic iron into the mouth of the three-legged golden toad. Su Tong followed him closely. She saw Li Qingshan put down the basket, walked to the true disciples, and asked, "Why are you here?" Su Tong was more convinced of her guess. If it were not for the fact that there were people in the Wanxiang sect, how could they have such an attitude? Those people were all human emperors who had gone through 5 heavenly tribulations. Little did he know that this was Li Qingshan's personality, even when facing demon god Chengqi. He was not willing to be subservient. The successor disciples were not surprised. Regardless of whether this lad was good or evil, he was by no means a coward. In particular, Ren Chuyo's eyes were filled with admiration. "I'm a little worried." Ruan Yarozhu smiled, her attitude was natural and peaceful. She seemed to be a little shy. She did not expect him to come over and talk to her like this. Li Qingshan was moved. Even if the world was difficult and evil people were everywhere, there would always be such a heart of gold. He sincerely said, "Thank you." Ruan Yarozhu shook her head gently, "I'm just here to take a look." No one could tell that this was a conversation between 2 cultivators who were 2 realms apart. It was this feeling of equality that moved Li Qingshan. He thought, maybe the Kailin's strategy of longevity should be practiced by people like her. "I'll return it to you when I get the bookmark." The 9-colored deer was so proud that she could not hold back anymore. She generously said, "No, lad. We'll give you the sapphire bookmark." She now found Li Qingshan very pleasing to the eye. They had made a lot of money in this bet. As for the sapphire bookmark, it was just a small amount of money and was not worth her attention. Ruan Yarozhu gently patted the 9-colored deer and said coquettishly, "Ju No, you must return it." Li Qingshan looked at Le Tien, "Senior brother Le Tien, when can I get my bookmark? Since it's junior sister Ruan's debt, I'll pay you now." Le Tien counted with his fingers and took out 3 sapphire bookmarks and 7 silver bookmarks. There was also a brass bookmark and a mystic wood bookmark. Only 3 bookmarks. Li Qingshan was surprised. He had risked his life in the yuan-fused mountain and earned a lot of yuan-fused magnets, but he only got 2 sapphire bookmarks in the end. "Isn't this too little? Could it be that Le Tien is scamming me?" Le Tien smiled and said, "What do you think?" Ren Chuyu said, "Lad, the sapphire bookmark is the highest grade bookmark in the nature sect. Do you think it's so easy to get it?" Li Qingshan finally understood the preciousness of the sapphire bookmark. He looked at Ruan Yarozhu deeply and thought, "Damn it. I said to win people over with virtue. But I haven't succeeded even once. In the end, I had to use force. Now, I'm about to be won over by virtue." Ruan Yarozhu looked down to avoid his burning gaze. She stretched out her hand and said, "All right, give it back." Li Qingshan put the sapphire bookmark in her hand and said solemnly, "You are a good person." "Li Qingshan, where are you from?" Leng Yuan suddenly asked with a solemn and scrutinizing expression. Li Qingshan's heart tightened. This was the question he didn't want to answer the most. He smiled and said, "From a very, very far away place." "May I know your name, fellow Daoist?" "Leng Yuan. I'm in charge of the security of the nature sect. Please answer my question truthfully. You don't dare to answer. Do you have a guilty conscience?" Leng Yuan's eyes became even colder. Li Qingshan also said seriously, I'm sorry. This is my privacy. After I understand the rules of the nature sect, I will cooperate with senior martial brother within the scope of the sect's rules. The 9 provinces all had treasures like the Xieji's horn that could distinguish between truth and lies. The human world probably didn't lack such methods. Moreover, a lie must have a loophole. In the end, he had to use more lies to make up for it. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, he would never lie. Leng Yuan was startled. He didn't expect to be rebuffed. Ruan Yarozhu and Pai Yongqiu both smiled. Ren Aoyou even laughed. Leng Yuan, you've met your match. Boy, I admire you more and more. Leng Yuan said, I will keep an eye on you. Li Qingshan nodded and smiled. He didn't talk to Ruan Yarozhu anymore. He turned around and walked back to the crowd. Su Tong and the other cultivators looked at him with admiration. A true disciple was a high and mighty figure. At this time, the 2 brothers also walked out of the mountain. Seeing this scene, they immediately gave up the idea of revenge. Instead, they were a little worried that Li Qingshan would hold a grudge. Soon, everyone's magnets fell into the 3-legged golden toad's mouth. Le Tien announced the ranking of this assessment. First place, Li Qingshan. Second place, Su Tong. Third place, Nai Xiuwen. Nai Xiuwu was the fair-faced gentleman of the 2 brothers. Originally, he had exchanged the same amount of magnets as the dark-faced fiend, but in the end, he took out a grape-sized piece of magnets from his sleeve and beat his elder brother, Nai Xiuwen. At that time, his expression darkened even more. If it weren't for the true disciples holding the line, they would have started fighting on the spot. Pai Yongqiu said to Ren Aoyou, what did I say? Ren Aoyou snorted. Did you win? Pai Yongqiu smiled. You can say I won. For a gambler, besides the result, winning or losing is also very important. Everyone boarded the big ship. However, Le Tien stopped Li Qingshan. Congratulations, junior brother Li. You became a true disciple as soon as you entered the sect. He smiled like an old fox staring at a big rooster. Li Qingshan clearly felt a sense of malice. He said bluntly, what do you want, senior brother? Le Tien said, junior brother, you're indeed a straightforward person. I don't have any other hobbies, but I like gambling. I'm especially optimistic about junior brother's gambling nature, so I'd like to make a bet with you. Ren Aoyou and the other 2 seemed to have already expected it. They all showed a look of interest. Ruan Yarozhu frowned. Senior brother Le Tien said, junior sister, you can't blame me for making a bet during the entrance examination. However, this is a private bet between me and junior brother Li. It has nothing to do with you. Ruan Yarozhu could only look at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan really didn't want to disappoint her, but he was really curious about the contents of the bet. Sigh, I've never liked gambling, but since senior brother Le has spoken, I can't just ignore it. May I ask what do you want to bet? Le Tien's smile became even wider. You're not far from becoming a chamber disciple. One more step and you'll become a true disciple. Why don't we bet on when you can become a true disciple? Oh, how long do you think it will take for me to become a true disciple? Chapter 1383. Le Tien's mask-like smile made him look like a well-tempered casino owner. The innocent Li Qingshan, who looked like a teenager, was the standard ignorant teenager in the story who was walking on a path of no return. He even blinked his eyes seriously. Senior brother Le, since it's a bet, we should have a target. Yes, 10 years it is. Hearing this, Li Qingshan didn't react, but the other true disciples all had different expressions. Ruan Yarozhu said angrily, Senior brother Le, I can't just ignore you bullying people like this. Others might not know, but as a true disciple, she knew very well how difficult it was to become a true disciple of the myriad phenomenon sect. In theory, as long as one had enough merits, even if one's cultivation wasn't high enough, they could still slowly become a true disciple. However, if one wasn't a human sovereign who had undergone 5 heavenly tribulations, it was very difficult to accumulate merits. A human sovereign completing 1 or 2 important tasks might earn more merits than a nascent soul cultivator could accumulate in 10 years. Unless Li Qingshan could quickly undergo 5 heavenly tribulations, but he was only at the 3rd heavenly tribulation. Becoming a human sovereign within 10 years was simply a pipe dream. Ren Aoyou also said with a smile, "Hey, Le Tian, this bet is a bit too much. It's not your usual style." Le Tian was known for his love of gambling, and he won more than he lost. The reason why other people were willing to gamble with him was because he was always very fair. He would never resort to trickery. Even if the loser was not convinced, they would still find a way to get back at him instead of never gambling with him again. Taking advantage of Li Qingshan's ignorance of the myriad sect and making a completely unfair bet was definitely not his style of doing things. "It's just a joke." Le Tian scratched his head. "I don't know why, but even if it's 10 years, I still feel a little uneasy. Senior brother, you think too highly of me. Please forgive me for not accepting such a bet." Li Qingshan said seriously. He seemed a little dissatisfied, but he was inwardly rejoicing. He was already considering whether or not to bet with Le Tian. Although he didn't know much about the myriad phenomenon sect, he knew that the so-called true disciples were those who had gone through 5 heavenly tribulations. It wasn't that he didn't have any confidence that he could survive 5 heavenly tribulations in 10 years. Right now, he was only half a step away from the 4th heavenly tribulation. If he cultivated the ape-demon transformation to the 5th layer, he would be able to immediately restore the ox, tiger, turtle, and phoenix transformations to the 5th layer. He reckoned that he would not be far from the 5th heavenly tribulation. Okay, I was just joking," Le Tian hurriedly said, "then 50 years it is. With your talent, you should have a high chance of success in 50 years. However, most nascent soul cultivators couldn't overcome the 5th or even the 4th heavenly tribulation in 500 years. They were forever stuck at the bottleneck until they died. Otherwise, they would have been turned into ashes by the tribulation lightning. But based on Li Qingshan's performance in the Origin Magnetic Mountain, this time limit could already be considered fair. Li Qingshan was absolutely willing. Based on the current situation, if he couldn't survive 5 heavenly tribulations in 50 years, he might as well buy a piece of tofu and kill himself. What was the point of ascending to the 9 heavens and fighting Cheongqi? But the expression on his face was very hesitant, as if he had considered it carefully. He bowed and said, "I'm sorry, senior brother Le. I still don't think gambling is very good." After saying that, he walked toward the ship. Ruan Yaozhu smiled. Not all men were like Le Tian. Le Tian was a little surprised. Based on his understanding of Li Qingshan, with 50 years, Li Qingshan would bet with him no matter what. But he actually refused. He blocked Li Qingshan's path and sized him up. "What do you want? Do you want to extend the time limit? You should know that even for people like us, 50 years is very long. If the progress of the gamble is too slow, it will be very boring. I can increase the odds." Li Qingshan sighed and said, "But I don't have anything to bet." Le Tian immediately said, "I can lend it to you." How could a casino owner not lend money? Li Qingshan sighed again. "Sigh, it's so long. I can't stand the interest." "You little brat, so you want me to lend it to you for free? If you die during the tribulation, who will I ask for compensation? It's gambling, so it's inevitable to take some risks." I agree with what senior brother Le said. If the gamble is too long, it will inevitably be boring. I also don't want to increase the odds and take advantage of you. How about this? Li Qingshan smiled and said, 30 years, 1-to-1. He had cut the 50 years limit by nearly half. Such confidence, or rather, arrogance, made the few true disciples look at him. In a mere 30 years, a disciple had become a successor disciple. There had never been such an example in the history of the Myriad Nature sect. In comparison, it was easier to cultivate a nascent soul to a young spirit. But even a peerless genius would need the support of a large amount of resources and hard work to have a chance. During this process, there would be absolutely no time and energy to complete the sect's tasks. Ruan Yaozhu wanted to persuade him, but when she saw Li Qingshan's high-spirited appearance and thought of all the things in the Yuan-fused mountain, she bit her lip and shook her head gently. Ren Aoyou smiled and said, "Kid, I think I'm crazy enough, But I didn't expect you to be even crazier. Do you know how much risk there is in this? Li Qingshan also smiled and said, even if I lose, I won't lose my life. It's not a risk, and getting some resources in advance is always beneficial to my cultivation. Of course, it's better if senior brother Le is willing to lend it to me. Pai Yongqiu couldn't help clapping his hands and said, beautiful. With that, he had turned the tables on Le Tien. If Le Tien was only willing to lend a very small number of green jade lots, it would be nothing to someone like Li Qingshan in a few decades. If he borrowed a lot, then he could immediately convert it into a large amount of resources and quickly improve his cultivation. Even if he lost in the end, it might not be a loss. In a situation where he had an absolute advantage, if Le Tien didn't dare to gamble, then he would lose face. So now he had to lend it to him even if he didn't want to. The smile on Le Tien's face became even wider, and his narrowed eyes flashed with sharpness. How much do you want to bet? This kid is indeed worthy of being the gambler that I like. Unknowingly, the gambling had already begun. If he wanted to regain the upper hand, he had to raise the stakes of this round to a level that would make his opponent fearful. He had to crush his opponent's psychological defenses and make him waver. This was the most common and useful trick in gambling, and as a human sovereign, he had an absolute advantage in this aspect. Li Qingshan said, how much do you dare to borrow? At this time, even the calm and stern Lung Yuan was moved. He realized that this joking gambling would probably turn into a shocking gamble. Le Tien also didn't expect this. He had originally lost to Li Qingshan and couldn't help but want to get back at him. He didn't expect that he would be forced to do so by Li Qingshan. The handsome man in front of him was no longer a small gambling stake for them to gamble with. Instead, he was the gambler standing on the opposite side of the gambling table, sitting on the same level as him, and even looking at him condescendingly. If you have the guts to lend me, I will dare to bet with you. Come, let me test your guts. Interesting. This is really interesting. Le Tien laughed heartily, and he even started dancing with joy. He seemed extremely delighted. Li Qingshan stood with his arms crossed, and Le Tien's face suddenly approached him. He raised a finger and said, 1,000. Ruan Yaozhu was stunned. She had won against Le Tien and the other three almost at the same time, but the green jade lots she had won were still less than 1,000. Even for a true disciple, a green jade lot was very precious, not to mention that Li Qingshan was just a nascent soul cultivator. Li Qingshan stretched out his hand and said, give it to me. If you lose, you have to pay 2,000 on the spot. Otherwise. Le Tien used his finger to lightly draw a line on his neck. No one can owe me a gambling debt. Li Qingshan grinned and said, if I don't pay, I will be at your mercy. Mosquitoes don't bite when there are too many of them. There was no need to worry when one had too many debts. 2,000 green jade lots might be a terrifying number to others, but to Li Qingshan, it was just not enough. It was not that he was really confident that he could become a true disciple of the Myriad Phenomenon sect in 30 years. Until now, he knew very little about the rules of the Myriad Phenomenon sect. However, according to Luo Hu Xiaoming's calculations, the 500-year agreement between him and demon god Chengqi was about the same time limit in the human realm. Either he defeated demon god Chengqi, then he would not have to worry even if he lost the bet, or he was defeated by demon god Chengqi. What kind of bullshit is senior brother Le Tien? If you have the guts, come to Qingqi Mountain and find me, you bastard. Even the Myriad Phenomenon sect master did not have the guts to do that. It could be said that this bet was a great help to him in his bet with demon god Chengqi. It was not that Le Tien was stupid, but that Li Qingshan was clever. Who would have thought a measly soul nascent cultivator would actually become involved with a demon god, and he was even saddled with a bet that was basically impossible for him to win. Therefore, people should have great ambitions, even if it would bring them great trouble. However, when you have a big trouble, a small trouble is no trouble. If you can solve a big trouble, a small trouble is nothing. If you can solve a big trouble, a small trouble is also nothing. Le Tien patted the three-legged golden toad, and it spat out 1,000 green jade lots. He handed them to Li Qingshan personally. Looking at Li Qingshan, who was happily counting the green jade lots, As if he had already won the bet and was counting how much he had won, he suddenly felt a little guilty. As a gambler, he knew how scary this feeling was, but at the same time, he became more and more excited. A gamble that could not make people feel this way was not a gamble at all. It was just a boring game. Li Qingshan counted the green jade lots carefully twice and asked Ruan Yarozhu to help identify if there were any fake notes in them. Only then did he put the green jade lots into his Sumeru ring with satisfaction. Le Wuyo knows his destiny, gambling with life and death. Le Tien sang loudly and returned to the three-legged golden toad's back. With a croak, the golden toad jumped into the sea. Ha ha ha, kid, I hope you can win. Ren Chuyu laughed 3 times and flew away. You're on your own, Leng Yuan warned and left as well. Pai Yongqiu went up and patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. We will meet again. In the blink of an eye, only Li Qingshan, Ruan Yarozhu, and the 9-colored deer were left on the beach. Ruan Yarozhu scolded, you shouldn't have gambled. Li Qingshan shrugged his shoulders. I already did. Men. Ruan Yarozhu sighed slightly. It will take a long time to get to the nature sect by boat. I will give you a ride. Chapter 1384. Li Qingshan couldn't help but look at the only mount here. If he could ride with her, it would be very good. The 9-colored deer was furious. It shook its head as if it wanted to use its horn to attack him. Don't even think about it. Li Qingshan originally didn't really want to ride her, but after hearing this, he actually wanted to. But of course, it was impossible now. In any case, the other party's realm was much higher than his. If they really fought, he might not be her opponent. Moreover, riding a deer depends on its master. Ruan Yarozhu smiled. I'll lead the way. I'll fly you there. It's faster than taking a boat. Thank you very much. Li Qingshan clasped his hands and smiled. I also had a mount, but I came out in a hurry and didn't bring it. The 9-colored deer raised its head. What kind of beast is it? Li Qingshan smiled. It's not a beast, it's a bird, a phoenix. The 9-colored deer was stunned for a moment, then laughed without caring about her image. If she was in human form, she might be rolling around with laughter. Phoenix, ha ha ha, you brat, you really know how to brag. As the king of birds, the phoenix's bloodline was naturally more sacred and noble than the 9-colored deer's. However, this kind of bird had always been known for its noble temperament. Even immortals might not be able to subdue it as a mount. Let alone such a small nascent soul cultivator, and a stinky man at that. Li Qingshan smiled and sighed. I originally had a cow, but unfortunately, I lost it. Ruan Yarozhu suddenly noticed that when he said this, although there was a smile on his face, his eyes were a bit strange. It was as if he was sighing and full of hope. At this time, the big boat had already set sail. She said, let's go too. The 9-colored deer lightly leaped into the air and said sarcastically, Li Qingshan, I hope I can see your phoenix mount soon. Let me see which phoenix is so blind. Li Qingshan followed closely behind and smiled. There will be a chance in the future. Achoo. In a corner of the 3,000 worlds, a blind phoenix sneezed again. Flying over the boundless sea, the curtain of night shrouded the land. The stars were bright, the moon was like a hook, and the clouds were pure white and translucent. Li Qingshan wanted to ask Ruan Yarozhu about the situation of the Wn Xiong sect, but he found that he couldn't get a word in. Ruan Yarozhu criticized him for gambling with Le Tien, and split the topic into 2 clues, Le Tien and gambling. First, she talked about the various dangers of gambling, and gave a series of clear and profound examples. Then, she talked about Le Tien's reputation in the Wn Xiong sect, and how good he was at gambling. In the end, he combined the 2 topics and once again told him that he shouldn't gamble, let alone gamble with Le Tien. The entire process was well reasoned and filled with clear examples. She spoke tirelessly and sincerely. Probably even seasoned gamblers would realize their mistakes and turn over a new leaf if they heard this. Only then did Li Qingshan discover that she was actually so talkative despite her quietness and dullness. He studied her face with interest. Are you listening or not? Ruan Yarozhu said angrily. Clearly, not only was she not dull, She had a sharp mind. Li Qingshan hurriedly said, "Of course I'm listening. Do you want me to recite it?" "There's no need," Ruan Yarozhu said in a bad mood. "Don't be angry. Gambling has many disadvantages." "Although gambling has many disadvantages, didn't you also win a bet this time? Furthermore, you got something without risking anything." Ruan Yarozhu didn't hide the fact that Letian and the others gambled. She didn't even hide the fact that she won a lot of green jade lots in the end. She wanted to use this to incite Li Qingshan's hatred for gambling. However, Li Qingshan was grateful for her trust and sincerity, so he wasn't angry about being used as a gambling tool. In the end, he helped her win a round. Otherwise, wouldn't that fellow Letian be proud of himself? Ruan Yarozhu said seriously, "The outcome of gambling doesn't lie in the outcome of a single round. Rather, if you win, you will continue to gamble until you lose everything you've won in the past. The path of cultivation lies in accumulation. This kind of thinking of taking shortcuts is already close to the evil path, and it will ultimately affect your entire cultivation." "What you said makes sense." Li Qingshan couldn't help but admire her insight. However, in life, there will always be times when you have no choice but to gamble. If you don't gamble, you won't be able to advance. Not to mention losing everything you've won. Even if you lose your life, you won't hesitate. You were once a noble princess who was doted on by countless people. You also entered a large sect like the Myriad Appearance sect, and you even survived 5 heavenly tribulations in such a short period of time to become a true disciple. Not everyone in this world has your luck and talent. Ruan Yarozhu was silent for a moment, then sighed. "You're right. I'm luckier than most people. I don't know what you've experienced in the past, but you've already reached this step. You're about to join the Myriad Appearance sect as a formal disciple, and you have a high chance of becoming a true disciple. Why can't you relax and gamble?" However, Li Qingshan smiled. "If you knew how I got to this step, you wouldn't have advised me to relax. However, you're right about one thing. Once gambling starts, it can't be stopped. If you can't win in the end, then lose everything." Ruan Yarozhu pitifully said, "Don't you feel that living like this is hard?" Li Qingshan said, "Although it's hard, it's also interesting." Ruan Yarozhu blinked, wanting to say something but hesitating. In the end, she still said, "You're a good person. I hope you can win in the end." Li Qingshan said, "I'll be counting on your auspicious words." We're almost at the Myriad Appearance sect. The 9-colored deer flew through the sea of clouds, and Li Qingshan followed it down. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. On the distant sea surface, there was a bright ball of fire burning, illuminating the dark clouds that shrouded the night like a mirage. As they approached the ball of fire, the 9-colored deer lowered its altitude. It was almost like it was galloping on the surface of the sea, stepping on the waves to advance, quickly skimming over the sea surface. Li Qingshan gradually saw the true appearance of the ball of fire, but he was a little doubtful of his eyes. This was because it wasn't an ethereal and quiet celestial mountain or spiritual island like he had imagined, but a glorious metropolis. Buildings rose from the ground one after another, but they were also full of carved beams and painted rafters, with arched eaves and corners. Everywhere, there were gardens, flowers, and trees, like a classical garden that had changed from a flat surface to a 3-dimensional one. The buildings were connected by long bridges. Below the bridges, there were winding rivers and continuous lakes, like a pearl necklace. Suddenly, it turned into a waterfall that poured down hundreds of feet, like a jade dragon leaping, and the sound of the waves could be heard for hundreds of miles. It was more spectacular and incredible than any city he had seen in his previous life. On the top of the mountain in the center of the island, there was a tall building that was thousands of feet tall. In its majesty, it also had the power to soar into the clouds. The top of the building had indeed sunk into the clouds, and all the buildings surrounded it like stars surrounding the moon. Chapter 1385. Drizzles of rain fell from the dark clouds, making the air even more moist and cool. The dense spirit chi made people feel relaxed, even breathing became much easier. Plus or minus, the 9-colored deer slowed down and trod on the magnificent stone bridge that spanned thousands of meters and was hundreds of meters wide, arriving at Wanxiang City. A huge waterfall flowed down from both sides of the bridge and into the deep, gloomy valley. Perhaps because it was already late at night, there was no one on the stone bridge. From afar, the city looked extremely glorious, but it was instead a bit quiet amidst the rumbling of the waterfall. Even though Li Qingshan didn't know much about the qi observation technique, he could feel the condensation of qi that reached extremely high into the sky. This wasn't a city for mortals, but a sacred land for cultivators. I'll send you off here. You should know the rest of the process. Once you've obtained the identity of a formal disciple, you can come to my 100 herb garden to take a look. I might be able to give you a job there. 100 herb garden. Li Qingshan nodded to show that he remembered. He watched as Ruan Yarozhu left on the deer and stepped into Wanxiang City alone. The terrain of the city was extremely complicated, twisting and turning like a maze. Sometimes he passed through corridors and gardens, sometimes he went down bridges. Since he couldn't fly, Li Qingshan had to rely on the spirit turtle's powerful divination ability to find the path to the sky. On the way, he encountered a few patrolling teams of guards. Li Qingshan suspected that they were Lung Yuan's subordinates, so he carefully avoided them to avoid unnecessary trouble. He didn't want to go to the sky, as he didn't have the qualifications yet. Only formal disciples had the right to enter the sacred land of the Wanxiang sect, and formal disciples happened to be the lowest limit. So you're Li Qingshan, the first place of this year's entrance examination. Why are you here so early? In the cold and empty hall, the cultivator in charge of welcoming had an equally cold expression. It was obvious that Li Qingshan's sudden arrival had disrupted some of his arrangements. After confirming Li Qingshan's name, he became a bit warmer. Although there were many formal disciples in the Wanxiang sect, they still had some status. However, he still had some status. Even if he met a successor disciple, he would still address him as a junior brother. As for this guide, his status in the Wanxiang sect was only that of a disciple who had just entered the sect. Li Qingshan said, "Senior brother Letian wants to make a bet with me, so he urged me to hurry over." I see. A hint of a smile appeared on the male cultivator's face. There seemed to be some pity in his eyes as he said, "You haven't even joined the sect yet you dare to make a bet with senior brother Letian. How dare you?" He did not even ask what the stakes were, seemingly certain that Li Qingshan would lose. Besides, he was just a nascent soul cultivator. How big could the stakes be? He was just being toyed with by senior brother Letian. Instead, he talked about Letien's strange stories. Every time he gambled, Letian would win. His opponents included human immortals and ghost immortals. Among them was the name of one gambler. Even Li Qingshan felt that it was like a thunderclap piercing his ears. It said that senior brother Lishan's lifespan was already at its end. He made a bet with one of the 10 great yin marshals of the netherworld, Oxhead Arbian, beside the Yellow Springs Road and won 300 years of lifespan. Oxhead Arbian? Oxhead Horseface. Li Qingshan's eyes widened. This sounded way too familiar. Haha, you've finally heard of this. You're not too ill-informed. There's no helping it. We cultivators are not as famous among mortals as the gods of the netherworld and netherworld. Black and white impermanence, Oxhead Horseface, 10 kings of hell. Li Qingshan muttered to himself about these famous figures. His heart pounded. He suddenly realized that he had indeed stepped into a world of immortals and Buddhas. Although he was still very far away from the 9 heavens, he was clearly very close. However, it was clear that he was already very close. The distance between him and these famous figures was already within reach. Perhaps, he would meet them by chance very soon. From the looks of it, did you ascend from the netherworld? As the guide spoke, he began his work in an orderly manner. Sometimes, he would bury his head and write furiously, and at other times, he would pass a document to Li Qingshan for him to fill it out. Li Qingshan had too many secrets. He had to deal with some parts vaguely or even leave them blank. He originally thought that there would be trouble. However, he realized that the guide did not even look at them. You don't have to find it strange. These are not for me to see. Just fill them in casually. If you really don't want to fill them, you can leave them blank. Then who are they for? Are they just for archiving? After Spirit Venerable Gui Hai looks through them, these documents will be destroyed. Everything about you will naturally be left in Spirit Venerable Gui Hai's sea of consciousness. Who is Spirit Venerable Gui Hai? Li Qingshan was a little surprised. This Spirit Venerable Gui Hai was too bored. Through his observation, there were at least hundreds of thousands of people in Myriad Phenomenon City. You really know nothing about the Myriad Phenomenon sect. You actually don't even know about Spirit Venerable Gui Hai. It's my first time here. Please enlighten me, senior brother. Li Qingshan handed over a brass lot. The guide looked at the brass lot and then at him. He said with a smile, as expected of the first in the test. You sure are generous. However, forget it this time. It wasn't easy for you to dig out those essence magnets. Leave them for bribing those fellows from the Heavenly Abode Department. Thank you, senior brother. Li Qingshan sighed inwardly. Indeed, there were still good people. It's not a big deal. I'll tell you if you want to hear it. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai is a spirit immortal who has transcended 6 heavenly tribulations. He is our Grand Sect Master's mount and has an extremely high status in our sect. He is on equal footing with the 2 sect masters. It can be said that he's an invisible sect master who guards heaven all year round. When you reach heaven, you will naturally see him. However, you have to be careful. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai is a natural god. His knowledge is as deep as the sea. No one in the sect can compare to him. He knows everything in the world. Furthermore, he's extremely talented. He's best at divination and avoiding calamity. Some of your information may be true, some may be false, some may be false. I can't understand it, nor can I be bothered to understand it. However, in Spirit Venerable Gui Hai's eyes, he can see everything clearly. Li Qingshan's heart stirred. Senior brother, may I ask what race Spirit Venerable Gui Hai is? Spirit Turtle. Li Qingshan thought to himself that he had indeed encountered someone from the same race. This wasn't much of a coincidence. There weren't many races that were natural gods to begin with. There were even fewer of them that formed a race. For example, the 3-legged golden toad and the 9-colored deer. Although their bloodlines were inferior to the phoenixes and spirit turtles, they were even rarer in numbers. After coming to the human realm, he encountered them. He didn't feel any joy from meeting someone from the same race. Instead, he was somewhat worried. It was difficult for him to estimate how powerful a spirit turtle that had transcended 6 heavenly tribulations and possessed a complete bloodline would have. This spirit turtle seemed to have a very rich reserve of knowledge and a master with the cultivation of a perfected immortal. His vague wording in the information would probably be seen through at a glance. Even if he left some blank space, it was possible for him to deduce a lot of information. However, it would be too obvious if he changed it now. Furthermore, he wouldn't be able to hide it when they met face to face. This was probably the greatest danger he had encountered since coming to the human realm. Once something went wrong, he would have no means of resisting. It was far more terrifying than the Essence Magnetic Mountain and the Earth Baneful Beasts. Perhaps from the moment he entered Myriad Phenomenon City, Spirit Venerable Gui Hai had been watching him. However, this was also a major opportunity to find the sinkhole. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai definitely knew how to enter the sinkhole and might even understand the prisoner of the sinkhole. Chapter 1386. However, as Ruan Yarozhu had said, once the game started, he couldn't stop until he won or lost his life. He could choose what to bet, but he couldn't choose not to bet. When he walked out of the cold hall, it was still drizzling, and the majestic sky was not far from him. There was a small badge in his palm, which was shaped like a cloud. It recorded everything about him, including his identity, status, and achievements. With this badge, he could enter many places in the nature sect freely and receive the benefits of a disciple who had entered the hall. He held the badge tightly and walked to the sky. He hoped that the guide cultivator was telling the truth. Junior brother Li, you don't need to worry too much. Except for the things related to the sky, Spirit Venerable Gui Hai rarely interferes with the sect's affairs. Even if you were a heinous demon, the Spirit Venerable wouldn't take a second look at you. But you don't look like one. Li Qingshan answered with a smile. If it was so easy to see through a demon, he wouldn't be a demon. He just hoped that Spirit Venerable Gui Hai would be deceived by his harmless appearance, and everyone would live in peace, even if he couldn't find any clues to enter the ultimate. After climbing hundreds of steps and stepping through the gate, the badge in front of his chest flashed slightly, and an invisible barrier opened for him. I'm afraid all the books in the world are here. As soon as he entered the building, he sighed from the bottom of his heart. Just the bottom floor had millions of books, piling up into mountains of books. It was a dazzling sight. Before he could even take a closer look, a refined female cultivator came up to him. May I ask if you're Li Qingshan? I am. May I ask who you are? Li Qingshan saw that the badge on her chest was slightly different from his. She was a disciple who had entered the hall. The Spirit Venerable has been waiting for a long time. He asked me to take you upstairs. The female cultivator examined Li Qingshan with a strange look. She had worked in the hall for many years, but she had never seen such a face. Otherwise, she would have had an impression of him. So, he must be a new disciple who had entered the hall not long ago. Since he was received by the Spirit Venerable in person, he must have some background. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. What he feared would come true. The old tortoise had indeed noticed him, but there was no turning back. He maintained his composure and cupped his hands. Senior sister, please lead the way. Following the spiral staircase up layer by layer, by the time he reached the 6th floor, Li Qingshan's identity as a disciple was no longer sufficient, but the invisible barrier of the array still opened layer by layer for him. Then, it silently closed behind him. Once the worst happened, he would not be able to escape unscathed. Even without this sky, if a demonic immortal wanted to deal with him, it would be as easy as killing an ant. Along the way, he could not be bothered with admiring the various sights in the sky. He circulated the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression as hard as he could, repeatedly predicting the omens in his head, but he received no results at all. It was like a flying insect colliding against glass time and time again. After trying a few times, he gave up. Back then, his spirit turtle's method of sea suppression had only reached a rudimentary level, and it had already rendered the divination of a grandmaster of the school of yin-yang ineffective, let alone when he faced a true spirit turtle right now. With a cultivation of 6 heavenly tribulations, the invisible barrier of fate set down was not something he could break through right now. Before the results were revealed, fate was impossible to know. He just wondered whether the spirit sovereign of the seas had seen through the truth of fate or not. Originally, Li Qingshan thought he would have to go all the way to the very top, but he never expected the female cultivator to make her way down the stairs after only reaching the 16th floor, making her way towards the depths of the bookshelves. She arrived between 2 bookshelves, before a fortress constructed from piles of books. He bowed respectfully and said, reporting to Spiritual Master, I have brought him here. All right. You can leave now. A calm, indifferent voice rang out from behind the books. The badge on the female cultivator's chest lit up slightly. Revealing a smile, Li Qingshan knew she had already received a contribution. Although it was just something as minor as leading the way, serving this invisible sect master was clearly a contribution to the sect. The female cultivator turned around and bade farewell. She glanced deeply at Li Qingshan again before disappearing into the mountain of books. Li Qingshan did not take the initiative to speak, while the spirit sovereign of the seas remained silent as well. In the silence, there was only the sound of pages flipping rapidly. Whoosh, whoosh. Like autumn leaves, they rustled to the ground. If it were not for the sound, Li Qingshan basically would have doubted whether there was a person behind the mountain of books, as he could not sense any aura at all. He knew this was one of the characteristics of the spirit turtle, so he waited silently with great patience. All right, I've finished another 1,000 books. Whoosh. The thousands of books piled up into a mountain of books danced about like startled butterflies. Some of them brushed past Li Qingshan's face, ruffling his long, black hair. He stared into the depths of the books without moving at all. By the time all of the books had returned to their respective bookshelves, an old man in black clothes stood near Li Qingshan. His appearance was nothing special, and it was even very easy for people to forget about him. Only his deep, silent eyes stared at Li Qingshan, making him feel like he was in the deep sea, facing fate itself. All of his secrets could not be hidden from him. Li Qingshan was very familiar with such eyes. They were the eyes of the spirit turtle. The moment he saw those eyes, Li Qingshan understood one thing. It was meaningless to lie in front of him. He bowed. Disciple Li Qingshan greets Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai said, "You have my race's bloodline." It was not a question, but a statement of fact. Yes. You just ascended from the lower realm. Yes. Why did you come to the myriad phenomenon sect? For cultivation. What else? To find the path that leads to the sinkhole. Why? For cultivation. What else? The question and answer came to an abrupt halt. Li Qingshan fell silent for a moment. Sorry, I can't answer this question. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai was unsurprised. Li Qingshan, I can't completely understand your destiny, but it's not because of your ability. Li Qingshan was speechless. Was it because he was a transmigrator? Or was it because he was already involved in a huge dispute that involved many important figures above the 9 heavens? This old turtle obviously couldn't understand it. However, not being able to understand it is the most troublesome. However, I sense the shadow of calamity from you. Li Qingshan said, blessings are accompanied by calamities, and calamities are accompanied by blessings. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai was unmoved as he said coldly, put down the badge and leave. Never return. Pretend you never came here. Chapter 1387. If regular nascent soul cultivators received a warning like that from a demon immortal, they would probably flee immediately, never daring to look back. However, Li Qingshan mocked loudly, as expected of the Spirit Turtle clan. How cowardly! Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai was not angered. He stared at him with a deep, indifferent gaze, as if he was facing the entire ruin's end. The pressure he gave off was more terrifying than any aura. Li Qingshan's smile vanished. I can leave, but I have a question I hope you can answer truthfully, Senior. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai said, ask away. Li Qingshan took a step forward and faced the gaze that was as cold as an abyss. He questioned, why don't you kill me? Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai fell silent for a moment. Just as you said, the Spirit Turtle clan is filled with cowardly people. With such a great difference in cultivation, he was still unable to grasp the principles of fate. It could only be said that there were many factors beyond his grasp at work. It was even accompanied by the shadow of calamity. The meaning behind it was very profound. A mere nascent soul cultivator. Even if he risked his life, what right did he have to make him feel calamity? Li Qingshan said, then aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai's cold gaze wavered slightly. It was like an ant provoking a dragon. It was completely unreasonable. Li Qingshan's expression did not show any provocation. Instead, he became calm and indifferent, identical to Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai. The bloodline of the Spirit Turtle flowed silently through his body. This is not a foolish threat. With your intelligence, you should be able to tell what kind of person I am. I've come to the Myriad Phenomenon sect to cultivate after so much difficulty, but I was mercilessly turned away. How can I not feel resentful? If I fulfill Ling Yun's ambitions in the future, how will you live? I originally had no ill will towards the Myriad Phenomenon sect, but I suddenly felt ill will for no reason. It's a blessing or a curse. Please consider it carefully, Senior. He spoke very honestly, but it was like a naked threat. Furthermore, a single thought from the other party could doom him to eternal damnation. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai said indifferently, as expected of my clan's bloodline. You know our temperament well, but do you really think that I don't dare to kill you? Li Qingshan said calmly, if Senior really wants to shut me out, why don't you just kill me with one strike? That would be much more satisfying. At the very least, you would be able to avoid the immediate future trouble. The two of them were obviously at daggers drawn, and their lives were on the line, but it seemed like they were talking about something unrelated to others. A visible future threat? Spirit Venerable Gui Hai said, then what's the invisible future threat? Senior, you'll know once you kill him. If another human immortal had been there, Li Qingshan would never have said something like that. If the human immortal had lost his temper, he might just kill the human immortal or use some other method to search the human immortal's soul. However, he possessed the spirit turtle bloodline, so he took advantage of the calm and cautious nature of the spirit turtle clan. Since Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai was wary, he wouldn't kill him no matter what. This gamble seemed extremely dangerous, but it was worth it. It could even be said that he had absolute confidence in winning. The worst outcome would be maintaining the status quo and being chased out of the myriad phenomenon sect. He did not rely on luck to get to where he was today. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai said, then what do you think? It's better to plant flowers than to plant thorns. It's better to show kindness than to accumulate grudges. I, Li Qingshan, am not a person who returns kindness with enmity. Even if I summon any calamity, I will bear it alone. It has nothing to do with the myriad phenomenon sect. Perhaps one day, the myriad phenomenon sect will need my care. Even if it's to seek fortune and avoid calamity, why not keep me under your watch? Everything is under your control. If there's a day when I harm the myriad phenomenon sect and Senior feels that killing me is better than keeping me alive, you can do so at any time. If others were to hear that, they would laugh their heads off. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai also smiled faintly. My master lives above the 9 heavens and is in charge of Emperor Vast Heaven's study. He transcends the 6 realms and is not part of the 5 elements. He has also attended the Buddhist ancestors' Yulanpen assembly and heard of the Tao ancestors' primordial chaos Tao fruit. He only greets the 18 Arhats and is on equal footing with the 10 Yama kings. All he befriends are immortals. Kid, you actually said that you want to take care of the myriad phenomenon sect. What a joke. Li Qingshan said, even immortals need people to do it. Who can predict what will happen in the future? Furthermore, the sea doesn't stop a trickle from flowing. Given how impressive the myriad phenomenon sect is, doesn't it still need to recruit disciples? I'm not talented, but I will definitely make some contributions. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai pondered for a long time. Even with his deduction abilities, he found it difficult to make a decision. Although this kid's cultivation level wasn't high, he was of great importance. He did not know who had planted this chess piece. Before there were obvious benefits and disadvantages, he was absolutely unwilling to make a move. However, it was precisely because of the importance that he was unwilling to keep him here. Otherwise, even if a demon emperor wanted to join the myriad phenomenon sect, it wouldn't be so troublesome. Be it deduction or prophecy, it was ultimately impossible to predict everything in the world. Otherwise, the spirit turtle race wouldn't need to hide in the deep sea. At this moment, he needed to be cautious. All right, you can stay. Li Qingshan's calm expression gradually melted as he revealed a smile. An indescribable joy rose in his heart. In this battle with the demon immortal, he had won another round. He knew very well how difficult it was to change a spirit turtle's mind. No matter how confident he was, he had to risk his life. Now that he had passed another round, he was taking another step forward. Fighting with the heavens, fighting with the earth, and fighting with humans was an endless joy. A great man would never lie to me. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai suddenly asked, what cultivation technique do you cultivate? This was another crucial question. Li Qingshan naturally wouldn't reveal the 9 transformations of the demons and gods. He said frankly, the Extreme Emperor's record of world destruction, also known as the Extreme Emperor's record of the world. I'm willing to offer it to the heavens. Hand it over. Yes. Li Qingshan recorded the cultivation technique into a jade slip and handed it over with both hands. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai seemed to have only probed it slightly before taking a deep look at Li Qingshan. What an interesting cultivation technique. It has given me some inspiration. I can perfect another heavenly book. The badge on Li Qingshan's chest flashed slightly as he gained a considerable contribution. Following that, he received an equally considerable bookmark. He understood that this was Spirit Venerable Guihai's main job in guarding this heaven. He had to collect all sorts of cultivation techniques and constantly perfect the myriad phenomenon heavenly book. He couldn't help but be delighted. He knew quite a number of cultivation techniques. There was still a world behind him. If he could offer all these cultivation techniques, wouldn't he be promoted to a legacy disciple in minutes? He immediately offered up the demon suppression statuary and the demon war statuary. Spirit Venerable Guihai took a look but said, "The cultivation techniques of the fighting fiend race have been gathered in this heaven. This demon suppression statuary is rather interesting, but its value isn't high." This time, Li Qingshan only obtained a few mystic wood bookmarks. The contribution points were pitifully low. He might as well have dug out a few essence magnets. This heaven had stood for countless years. Above it was a perfected immortal grand sect master. Below it was Spirit Venerable Guihai's incessant inference. Below it was the accumulated contribution points of past disciples. Ordinary cultivation technique books were no longer of any value. They had to be extraordinary, or they had to be very powerful and brilliant. The Extreme Emperor's record of world destruction was a powerful cultivation technique to begin with. Furthermore, it was brewed during the destruction of the world. It had greater value when compared to the original Extreme Emperor's record of the world. Chapter 1388. Senior, may I ask, if I want to read the heavenly book, which level should I go to? What's the price? Li Qingshan had already decided to strengthen the human cultivation method as an important part of increasing his own strength, and this heavenly mountain was exactly what he needed the most right now. The heavenly book needs to be exchanged with bookmarks. Do you have any? Thank you, Senior Brother Letian, for lending me so many green jade lots. Li Qingshan smiled. It seemed like this old turtle didn't know everything. Prophecy and divination weren't omniscient. Spirit Venerable Guihai closed his eyes and concentrated for a moment. When he opened his eyes again, there was a clear light in them. I see. What a big gamble. What a big investment. I have a heavenly book here that is suitable for you. Li Qingshan asked, what arcane book? Unfettered heavenly scripture. Unfettered sutra. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. According to what Luo Hu Xiaoming had said, the Extreme King's records of the world and the Extreme King's records of world destruction contained the will and path of the Mahesvara demon lord. Could it be that this book of freedom corresponded to it? Not bad. Coincidentally, the cultivation technique that you contributed gave me some inspiration and helped me perfect this heavenly tome. Senior, please introduce the contents of this heavenly book. For example, what realm can one cultivate it to? Li Qingshan humbly asked for guidance, greatly impressed by Spirit Emperor Guihai. In other words, in such a short time, Spirit Emperor Guihai had thoroughly understood the Extreme King's records of the world and the Extreme King's records of world destruction. He had also perfected the Book of Freedom. This kind of deduction ability was simply insane. For so many years, he had only cultivated the records of the Extreme King's world destruction. It was already difficult for him to combine the two techniques, let alone combine them. Now that he had a better and more complete technique in front of him, he couldn't help but feel that coming to the Wen Xiong sect was the right decision. Your cultivation technique is known as the Ultimate Emperor. Thus, this heavenly book could be considered to be at the Extreme Immortal Realm and could reach the Extreme Immortal Realm. Although I can't deduce a higher realm, I can definitely have greater development. The Mahesvara Heavenly Demon Master resided at the top of the world of lust, and because he had attained Mahesvara, he was known as the Lord of 3,000 worlds, being both good and evil at the same time. Being both a god and a devil, combining life and death into one to attain the realm of great freedom. Of course, this unfettered heavenly tome alone won't be enough to obtain great freedom. To be precise, it's only minor freedom at most, but it's already very rare. The great freedom Heavenly Demon Master's path isn't just his path, it's also one of the 3,000 great Taos. Not only does it suit your temperament, but it also suits your current cultivation at the same time. At the very least, it won't cause your current cultivation to go to waste. Do you want it? Li Qingshan replied without hesitation, "Of course I do. Bring me 850 green jade lots." "So expensive." Li Qingshan grinned. This was daylight robbery. The bookmarks he had obtained from the Extreme Emperor's record of world destruction and the Extreme Emperor's record of the world didn't even amount to a fraction of what he had obtained. Was this old bastard trying to mess with him? Cultivation methods are the foundation of cultivation. Do you think it's that easy to obtain a set of cultivation methods? Millimeter, that makes sense. 850 it is. Li Qingshan thought about his own 9 transformations of demons and gods and Little Un's path of whitebone and great beauty. He had to admit this. A set of powerful and suitable cultivation methods could only be obtained with great fortuitous encounters. It was already fortunate that he could directly exchange for it. Everyone knew the price of the heavenly tome in the Myriad Phenomenon sect. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai was in charge of the sect, so he probably wouldn't scam him in such a place. Thus, he obediently took out 850 green jade lots. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai casually accepted it and gave him a jade scroll. Li Qingshan skimmed through it. He found it profound and indescribable. As he comprehended it further, all sorts of illusions appeared in front of him. Sometimes it was the vast starry sky, sometimes it was corpses and blood. Sometimes it was the horrifying tragedy of the destruction of the world, sometimes it was the youthful vigor of saving the world, all sorts of illusions condensed into images of gods and demons. Some were gentle, some were terrifying, some were dancing kings, some were beast lords. For a moment, it was as if a group of demons were dancing wildly, shaking his mind. He could not help but want to dance with them. There was an unparalleled joy in his chest that kept expanding, almost bursting out of his limbs and bones, rising beyond the clouds and filling up the entire world. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai silently observed Li Qingshan. He did not remind him how dangerous it was for him to casually read the entire Heavenly Tome of Freedom at his current cultivation level. The Heavenly Tome of Freedom was probably the most dangerous and unfathomable of the Myriad Phenomenon Heavenly Tome. It was the one that could easily cause one to go berserk. It was filled with contradictions and arguments, chaos and impermanence. If one was careful and cautious, fearful and hesitant, it would be difficult for one to be free. If one were to laugh in joy and dance with it, one would definitely fall into madness and confusion. Even though he had spent a lot of effort to complete the derivation, it was only a prototype. The path of the great freedom demon lord was not something anyone could walk. However, ever since Li Qingshan started cultivating, the battle between gods and demons in his heart had never stopped. The ferocity of the tiger demon made him bloodthirsty and warlike. He liked the freedom of the ape demon the most, but he could not destroy the benevolence of the Chileen. Layers of demonic thoughts and divinity were constantly fighting and pulling at each other. He was once known as the Hero King. He used novels to spread martial arts and wanted to make all living beings equal. He was once kind and wanted to save the world. However, he did not hesitate to destroy the world to fight a strong enemy. He never fell into a dilemma and could not extricate himself. He did not change his original heart and had no regrets or complaints. To a certain extent, this Heavenly Tome of Freedom could be said to be tailor-made for him. At the very least, it would not be so easy for him to go berserk. He retracted his divine thoughts from the Jade Scroll and did not seem to be reluctant to leave the feeling of freedom. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior. This technique is indeed wonderful. I will cultivate it well and strive to reach the next level." He could not help but feel glad that he made this bet with Letienne. Otherwise, he did not know how many years he would have to work for the Myriad Phenomenon sect to obtain this Heavenly Tome of Freedom. Time was really too important to him. The benefits of this bet were already showing. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai pondered and said, "The warning was indeed unnecessary. This child has a strong and resolute heart. No ordinary person can compare to him. He is an unparalleled talent. If he does not fall, he will definitely have a great opportunity. He will not just be a direct disciple of the Myriad Phenomenon sect. I do not know if this is a blessing or a curse for the Myriad Phenomenon sect. Let me observe him carefully. He waved his hand indifferently and said, "If there is nothing else, you can leave. Don't disturb my reading." He turned and left. Li Qingshan had achieved his goal of staying in the myriad phenomenon sect and obtained an extremely important heavenly tome. He should have been satisfied, but he felt a sense of loss as if he had missed something important. He glanced at the bookshelves on both sides that were dozens of feet tall and reached the dome. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He recalled the thousands of books that flew toward him like butterflies. With his extremely strong memory, he searched through the books on the bookshelves and discovered something strange. Most of those books were not secret manuals of cultivation techniques, but all kinds of legends, historical stories, and stories of the same kind. He shouted at Spirit Venerable Gui Hai's back, "Wait." Spirit Venerable Gui Hai turned around with his hands behind his back. He did not move and his head almost turned half a circle. "What else is there?" Chapter 1389. How is it? Spirit Venerable Gui Hai looked at him curiously. This was because the myriad phenomenon sect's two sect masters had been following Elder Heaven Book above the 9 heavens for many years. Only he guarded the 9 heavens all year round. Firstly, it was to protect the sect and prevent foreign invasions. Secondly, it was to perfect the myriad heavenly book and accumulate knowledge for cultivation. He was a quiet and inactive person to begin with, so this job was very suitable for him. His main source of entertainment was reading. Among all the different types of books, only fresh and interesting stories could stand the test of time, allowing him to maintain his interest. As for the other types of books, be it poems, songs, or exquisite treatises, his wisdom and experience were enough to surpass most authors in the world. They were not worth reading at all. And this hobby of his was known by everyone in the sect. Therefore, disciples would often gather stories and contribute them in exchange for contribution bookmarks to satisfy his little hobby. In essence, the massive myriad phenomena sect was meant to serve Elder Heavenly Tome, Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai, the 2 sect masters, and a few others. Li Qingshan said excitedly, "I'm a novelist." "Heh, that's odd." The corners of Spirit Venerable Gui Hai's mouth curled up slightly. He had probably smiled more today than he usually did in a year. "It's true." Li Qingshan originally wanted to say that he had written books, but on second thought, they were basically copied and handed over to Little and to polish. It had nothing to do with him. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai would probably see through him the moment he said it, so he was too embarrassed to lie in front of him. Spirit Venerable Gui Hai looked at him indifferently with a mocking expression. Just now, when Li Qingshan was provoking him, the mockery was not as intense. "Heh, you are really a newborn calf that isn't afraid of tigers. Do what you need to do." Spirit Venerable Gui Hai waved his hand like he was shooing away a fly. He did believe Li Qingshan a little when he said that he could cultivate to become a perfected immortal. As for being a novelist, forget it. Even with my eyes closed, I can tell that you have some ink in your stomach. I said that I would contribute to the myriad phenomenon sect. Senior, you are right in front of me. Why give up what is near for what is far away? I wonder if I can get bookmark contributions by contributing a novel? Li Qingshan looked at Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai's eyes. It was like looking at a treasure trove filled with bookmarks. Of course, there was also a huge amount of contribution points. If it's interesting, it's worth reading. It's better than ordinary cultivation technique manuals. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai clearly didn't believe that Li Qingshan had anything worth reading. "All right, I understand. Senior, please lend me the jade slip again." "What are you doing?" Li Qingshan's eyes sparkled. "I want to present the book." The jade slip streaked through the air and fell into Li Qingshan's hand. He immediately closed his eyes and concentrated. He began to input a novel into it. A moment later, he returned the jade slip to Venerable Sea Spirit. "The Great Legend of the White Ape King. You wrote it." Spirit Venerable Gui Hai frowned and was slightly surprised. With his quick spiritual senses, he had read more than 100,000 words in the blink of an eye. "Yes, what do you think, Senior?" This was Li Qingshan's only original novel. He was quite serious about it. "The words are crude and the characters are dull. It's even mixed with a bunch of low-level martial arts techniques. It's really long and stinky. In the blink of an eye, Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai had read hundreds of thousands of words, but it was a series of bad reviews. Li Qingshan knew he was not cut out for this. The biography of the White Ape King had been written with the help of those messy, low-level martial arts techniques to attract readers. In the original miniature world, there were not a lot of people who would criticize the contents of the book, but this kind of evaluation still made him a little unhappy. At that moment, the badge on his chest lit up slightly, and a few mystic wood lots were thrown over. He grabbed them and looked at Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai in surprise. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai said lightly, "But there are some good points. It wants to make the world harmonious and everyone is equal. It's quite benevolent and bold. At least it's long. It's worth a few mystic wood lots and a few contribution points. Alright, I'll accept this book." Although it was a little like dismissing a beggar, Li Qingshan was still very happy. "Thank you, Senior. After all, this was his biological son. He had put a lot of effort into it. It was better to sell it than to be worthless. And it wasn't just a few mystic wood lots and a few contribution points, but a door that had been opened." Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai was about to leave when Li Qingshan said, "Senior, don't go. I still have more." Oh! What Li Qingshan contributed again was not the book he had written. In the 5 continents, the gods descended and searched the world. Since ancient times, there had been 100 schools of thought in the 9 states. Although the school of fiction had not been very prosperous, it had a long history. After a long period of time, it had also left behind many classic works. While Li Qingshan was talking to Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai, he used the will of the world god to search for these books and recorded them into a jade slip through his main body. The 5 continents and the human realm were separated by an invisible realm. They could only communicate with each other through the heaven-climbing vine. Otherwise, they could forget about bringing over even a grain of sand. However, the main body and the avatar shared the same knowledge and memories, and that was enough. This book is quite interesting. The words are also much smoother and more beautiful. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai nodded slightly and revealed a look of satisfaction. He even slowed down his reading speed and seemed to enjoy it. However, he finished reading in an instant. The badge on Li Qingshan's chest lit up again. This time, he had obtained a few brass lots. They weren't that rare or precious, but it was a very good start. He could already vaguely see Le Tien's misfortune of losing the bet, so he immediately offered another book. The Spirit Emperor Gui Hai glanced at him and became interested. He just gave Li Qingshan an extra jade slip so that he could continue inscribing and reading without stopping. In fact, he rarely had such an opportunity to read so many high-quality novels in a row. This was because he had high standards. It was difficult for the novels collected by ordinary disciples to catch his eye, so the rewards weren't that high. As for the study companions, attendants, and servants, although they valued this reward, they didn't even have the qualifications to enter heaven. Although they could offer some books through the book collection office, the range of their activities was very narrow, and the books they could search for were limited. As for the disciples who had advanced to the next level, they often didn't think much of this reward. If they had the free time, they might as well do something else and obtain more contribution bookmarks. As for the inherited teachings disciples, there was no need to mention them. Due to various reasons, as well as the fact that he read books too quickly, he often had to repeatedly read some old books. He knew very well that these books were not written by Li Qingshan. He could also roughly guess that Li Qingshan had brought them from a certain world. These novels came from the accumulation of a world, which was why they had such quantity and quality. Chapter 1390. It's here, it's here. This was the first time Li Qingshan realized that inscribing jade slips was such an arduous task. He had to constantly maintain his focus and could not slack off at all. Chasing after books was like carrying something that was not very heavy. In the beginning, he did not feel anything, but as time passed, his hands and feet would turn numb. He had to rely on the spirit turtle transformation to hold on. More importantly, The emblem on his chest flickered with light and the bookmarks. There were not many of them. There were only some mystic wood, brass, and silver lots. There was not even a single green jade lot. However, Spirit Venerable Gui Hai was quick to read the information. In a moment, he had accumulated a huge amount. His contribution points were also rising rapidly. Later on, Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai found it troublesome and asked, "How much more do you have?" Li Qingshan answered, "As much as you want." Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai directly gave him a huge sum of contribution points and 10 green jade lots. He said, "If it's enough, I will reward you separately. If it's not enough, you will be deceiving a senior. Not only will I have to return everything, but I will also punish you heavily. Don't worry. I have plenty." Li Qingshan agreed immediately. However, he felt a little worried after thinking about it. "I'll respect you as a senior, but don't scam me." That was because the value of every book was different. It was all up to Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai. If he only gave mystic wood lots when he should have given brass, there was nothing Li Qingshan could do about it. Spirit Sovereign Gui Hai said unhappily, "Darn brat, you are arrogant and think too little of others. I'm a book lover. Even if it's for the sake of the author, I will not belittle the value of these books for some petty gains. I want as much as you have. Just give it to me." All right. In the blink of an eye, the sky lit up. A night had passed. The surging ocean carried the myriad phenomenon sect as the roiling red clouds surrounded the sky. And in the east, there was a stone wall over 100 feet tall. In front of it was a large square. The stone wall was smooth and glossy. Only the words Myriad Phenomenon Ranking were engraved at the top. As the red sun rose above the East Sea, the sunlight gradually shone on the stone walls from top to bottom, reflecting the names one by one. The names were lined up one by one, and the name at the top was purple. It gradually became lighter, and after 20 or so names were listed, it turned into a sky blue color. It gradually became lighter again, and another few hundred names were listed. At the bottom was a golden color, and there were thousands of them. The pyramid was generally divided into 3 levels. They respectively represented the 10,000 elephant sect's true disciples, inner disciples, and ascension disciples. The 2 words Le Tien were glowing purple and were surprisingly ranked 8th on the list. This represented his extremely high status in the Myriad sect. In the Wanxiang sect, seniority didn't depend on one's cultivation level or how early one entered the sect. It was all in this list. Li Qingshan had only been a disciple for less than a day. Even though he had contributed a lot of primary magnets in the entrance examination and was not far from becoming a chamber disciple, he was still at the very bottom of the list. The light yellow name seemed to be melting in the sunlight. There were still a few thousand names between him and the green middle rank. This once again proved that the words of the casino owner couldn't be trusted. If becoming a chamber disciple was so easy, why would there be thousands of people struggling here, not to mention the few true disciples? However, his name only stayed at the bottom of the list for a very short period of time. To be precise, it was only for an instant. Then, it immediately jumped up a few hundred places. The scene was quite eye-catching. Several hundred names moved down one place at the same time. The plaza was bustling with people, and there were also many people standing under the stone wall to watch. This scene immediately attracted the attention of many people, and they all let out gasps of surprise. The entire plaza was immediately alarmed. Not knowing what had happened, they all looked at the stone wall and noticed a light yellow name. Li Qingshan, who is that? Never heard of him. I've never heard of such a person among the study companions generation. He's probably new. Isn't the entrance examination just recently? The examination just ended, and the guide boat has just arrived. Look at the group of people in front of the stone wall. They're still following the guide around, so how could they have gotten so many contribution points? One of the study companions must have gotten some kind of opportunity. There are tens of thousands of study companions in the sect. How can you remember all of them? Maybe. Look, he's still moving up. Sigh. The seniority is growing so fast. I was a senior brother just now, but now I'm his junior brother. What kind of opportunity did he get to get so many contribution points in a row? After a night of effort, Li Qingshan's name didn't rise as fast as before, but it was still climbing at a speed visible to the naked eye. He surpassed one senior brother after another, and gained one junior brother after another, causing everyone to be dumbfounded. Nai Xiuwen and Nai Xiuwu were standing side by side in front of the stone wall. The younger brother, Nai Xiuwu, had a pale face, and the scars left by Li Qingshan's violent beating had yet to disappear. The older brother, Nai Xiuwen, on the other hand, had a black face, so it was hard to tell. After fighting openly and secretly for a while, they actually didn't break up. Instead, after half a day and a night of sailing, they were on good terms with each other and were still good brothers. According to the usual practice, the disciple in charge of guiding them would bring them around Wanxiang City for sightseeing. This plaza was their first stop, mainly to view the Wanxiang ranking, so that they could understand their status in the sect and motivate them a little. Because the two brothers had high cultivation, they were at the front of the crowd. They looked up at the name and couldn't help but open their mouths. As the name continued to rise, their heads were raised higher and their mouths were opened wider and wider. Brother, is it that Li Qingshan? Who else could it be other than him? Sigh, it's not a shame to lose to him. You guys are from the same batch. Do you know where this junior brother Li came from? The guide disciple was the one Li Qingshan saw last night. He was also extremely shocked. Where did he go last night? How did he get so many contribution points in one night? If this goes on, it won't be long before I have to call him senior brother when I see him. The two brothers looked at each other. They had also heard about the big bet. After all, they were nascent soul cultivators, so Letian and Li Qingshan didn't deliberately lower their voices. However, they decided to keep quiet. Not to mention Letian, just Li Qingshan alone was not someone they should offend. Senior brother, we don't know either. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. Don't try to fool me with that. The guide disciple was a bit dissatisfied, but he didn't force them. Although one of them was an attendant and the other was a servant, it was only a matter of time for them to become disciples with their cultivation. Su Tong had a special ability in this aspect, and she heard it clearly yesterday. She suspected that it was Sister Ruan Yarozhu who helped them. Alas, it's really good to be under a big tree. I also need to find a big tree to lean on. In the crowd at the back, among the envious faces, a trace of resentment flashed in the eyes of a monk. He was bald, but he was wearing a daoist robe. He was the muscular old daoist who had been burnt black all over. Because of Li Qingshan's kindness, he barely survived and almost crawled out of the Yuan Ci mountain. He didn't have a piece of Yuan Ci iron in his hand, and he luckily passed the entrance assessment based on Letien's promise to Ruan Yarozhu. He had a strong body and abundant blood qi, so he seemed to recover faster than the two brothers. However, his hair and eyebrows couldn't grow out at once, and his internal injuries were very serious. Not only was his cultivation greatly damaged, but his lifespan was also affected. He hated Li Qingshan very much. Because he was afraid that the two brothers would secretly attack him, he hid in the crowd, and he was frequently looked at, which made him feel ashamed and resentful. Seeing that his enemy was promoted step by step, but he had to start from a servant, he hated him even more. His internal organs felt like they were being cut by knives and burned by fire, which aggravated his internal injuries, and his face turned green and red. The two brothers seemed to feel something and looked back, only to see a bald head gradually retreating into the crowd, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. It's not that easy to withstand the wind and fire joint attack of our brothers. Now that the wind is breaking and the fire poison is attacking his heart, he still dares to provoke the devil in his heart. This old man can forget about going through the fourth heaven's punishment in his life. The muscular old Taoist quietly retreated from the crowd, pulled one of them, and asked, "May I ask where can I see senior brother Letian? You're new here, right? Why do you ask? I have something to report to senior brother Letian. At this time, he should be in the chaotic fate workshop. To be continued." Chapter 1391. Different from other sects, Wanxiang City was not a sealed-off cultivation ground. Instead, it was open to all cultivators. Cultivators could freely exchange, rest, and have fun here. There were hundreds of thousands of servants in the sect, and most of them were here to serve them. Thus, all sorts of facilities were created. Go clubs, restaurants, tea houses, and even brothels. As long as one wanted to and had the bookmark, everything could be bought here. It could be said to be all-inclusive. Among all these facilities, the most famous was the Chaotic Life Place, a casino personally managed by Letienne. Although there were many cheating methods in the cultivation world, one could always guard against them. However, divination and prophecy were impossible to guard against. Thus, a formation was specially set up to disrupt fate, which was why it was called Chaotic Life Place. The old Daoist soon arrived at the entrance of the Chaotic Life Place. The vermilion archway was tall, and people walked to and fro below. On the left was a golden toad, and on the right was a white jade piccio. There was also a stone tablet with a sentence carved on it: "Gambling changes one's fate, Letienne." This was probably one of the origins of the Chaotic Life Place. The archway was bustling with people. There were many buildings in the city that servants were not allowed to enter, but this Chaotic Life Place was the only exception. Regardless of status, anyone could come and try their luck. At this juncture, the old Daoist was a little timid, and paced around the archway for a while. However, he was not only here to take revenge on Li Qingshan, but also to climb up the tree that was Letienne. If he could gain a foothold in the sect, he would be able to fight with Li Qingshan for a long time in the future. Otherwise, just Ruan Yaozhu alone was enough to make him afraid. Thus, he steeled his heart and barged in. At the highest level of the Chaotic Life Place, bright sunlight filled the room. Letienne was lying on a golden rattan chair. The golden goblet in his hand was glistening, and the mellow wine was dyed golden. From here, he could see most of the buildings in the city. Letienne sipped the golden wine and looked at a certain place in the city, deep in thought. A female cultivator knocked on the door and entered. She wore a golden dress that dragged on the ground. She wore a golden phoenix hairpin, golden earrings, golden bracelets, and other gold accessories. However, she did not look tacky at all. Instead, she looked extraordinarily noble and bright. She looked like the empress of a great country. Compared to Letienne, who was lying on the reclining chair, he looked more like the second generation of a wealthy family. The female cultivator was very careful and her footsteps were as light as a cat's. She whispered into his ear, "Senior Marshal Brother, there's a Daoist who doesn't look like a Daoist. This monk doesn't look like this monk's servant. He wants to see you, saying that he wants to thank you for your kindness. I saw that he has a nascent soul cultivation base, so I came to report to you. I won't see you." "Yes." When the female cultivator saw that Letienne had no intention to continue speaking, she reluctantly left the room. A cultivator immediately came up and respectfully asked, "Senior Marshal Sister Jin, what did Senior Brother Le say?" She had regained the majesty of an empress. Her phoenix-like eyes were filled with killing intent. "Make him scram." The order was passed on a few more times, and finally, "It was all of you, beat that bald donkey out of here." This Senior Marshal Brother, although he is only a servant, he is still a nascent soul cultivator. We are only at the foundation establishment stage, how can we defeat him? So what if you're at the nascent soul realm? This is the Chaotic Fate Place. All of you are attendants, so how could he, a mere servant, dare to retaliate? How unlucky. I was scolded by the foreman because of him. People say that if you see a bald person, you will lose, and it is indeed true. Thus, the old Daoist was beaten up again and thrown out of the door, surrounded by the crowd. Although he didn't suffer any injuries due to his strong physique, he felt depressed and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, which worsened his internal injuries. "Letienne, why don't you make him stay?" The three-legged golden toad turned into a golden-haired, golden-eyed young man, lazily lying on the edge of the hot spring. He stacked the gold bars high up, stuck out his tongue, and rolled up a piece, chewing as he mumbled. "He is just a piece of trash. He is a nascent soul cultivator. Are you angry? That Li Qingshan is really powerful. He is about to beat you twice in a row." The three-legged golden toad glanced outside, following Letienne's gaze. It was the big square where the myriad phenomenon list was erected, and even Li Qingshan's name could be seen clearly. A piece of trash is not worth the bet, not even a piece of mystic wood lot. Does Lang Yuan think that he is the only one who saw the essence stealing and qi concealing embryo art? The most important thing in gambling is courage. This kind of rat who treats cowardice as prudence and despicability as wisdom will only lower my chances of winning. That Li Qingshan was summoned as soon as he entered the heaven, so he must have contributed some miscellaneous books, and the number must be very large. This is not surprising, after all, he most likely ascended from the mortal realm, and nascent soul cultivators of the human realm don't have this kind of courage. Le Tien wasn't worried at all. His deduction was almost exactly the same as the reality. The three-legged golden toad swallowed all the gold. He doesn't look like someone who likes to read. The wine in the golden goblet shook slightly, and Le Tien said, so he will come out soon. However, Li Qingshan stayed in the heaven for 6 days and 7 nights before coming out. In these 6 days, his ranking on the myriad phenomenon ranking rose step by step, constantly rising. Towards the end, he slowed down a lot because he had already contributed most of the most valuable books in the 5 states world, and the speed at which he recorded in the jade slips became slower and slower. However, he still climbed up without a moment's pause, surpassing another 1,000 people. Just now, he stopped, actually becoming a small legend in the myriad phenomenon sect. However, Li Qingshan felt utterly horrible right now. His head felt like it was about to split open. The drain on his soul sense from constantly recording the jade slips was only a small matter. Most importantly, he had several thousand novels churning through his head, yet he could still remember every single character and every single line of dialogue. They were all lifelike, like a dream. As he gazed at myriad phenomenon city before him, he found it unreal. He understood very well why the Clam King of Mirage Sea had gone mad. "Hey, kid, you've finally come out." A familiar voice rang out, and Li Qingshan immediately saw the 9-colored deer, as well as the fresh and pleasant Ruan Yarozhu in a light green dress beside him. He immediately felt much better. "Miss Ruan, this young man greets you. P2E, I'm about to go crazy. Fellow Ruan, what are you doing here? You've already entered the sect, so you should call me senior sister," Ruan Yarozhu said with a smile. With her back to the morning sun and the morning wind, her fine black hair swayed by her ears. Li Qingshan sincerely called her senior sister. "Were you waiting for me here, senior sister? You haven't come to the 100 Herb Garden for a long time. I heard that you were summoned by the Spirit Sovereign, and you haven't come down for a few days. Are you all right?" Ruan Yarozhu said with concern. "I've made senior sister wait for a long time." Li Qingshan was moved, and said, "It's fine, I just gave some books to the Spirit Sovereign to earn some contribution points and bookmarks." Ruan Yarozhu smiled. "You've already become the leader of the Wan Xiong sect. I'm afraid senior brother Le is scared to death by you. Ch, let him gamble." She even glanced in the direction of the chaotic life square. Li Qingshan laughed heartily. "Senior brother Le has a big business, and he has plenty of horses and mules. Why would he care about this small amount of money?" In the chaotic life square, Le Tien really heaved a sigh of relief. If Li Qingshan kept improving at that speed, it wouldn't be difficult for him to become a direct disciple in 30 years. Ruan Yarozhu said, "Unfortunately, the number of books I can give is limited. Otherwise, you'd definitely win. Why don't you come to my 100 Herb Garden and do some things? Although it won't be that fast to increase your contribution points, it's still a stable income." Li Qingshan smiled mysteriously. "That's not necessarily true. As the saying goes, my life has its limits, but books have no limit." Le Tien's heart was in his throat again. To be continued. Chapter 1392. In Ruan Yaozhu's eyes, that smile was full of vitality facing the morning sun. She couldn't help but smile. Although the Heaven's Gate was not as noisy and lively as the chaotic life place, it was still a place where people came and went. Moreover, they were all disciples who had entered the inner chamber. This scene of looking at each other and smiling, when seen by bystanders, caused them to be filled with wild and fanciful thoughts. Originally, Ruan Yarozhu was hiding in a hidden place waiting for Li Qingshan. At this moment, Men and women all came up to greet her, calling out, "Senior Marshal Sister Ruan." However, they were all thinking in their hearts, "Who is this man? Why is he so close to Senior Marshal Sister Ruan?" Perhaps it was because Li Qingshan was here, but Ruan Yarozhu felt slightly uncomfortable. "Junior Marshal Brother Li, let's go to the 100 Herb Garden." "Okay." Li Qingshan immediately noticed that the gazes of the people around him were getting more and more strange, as well as unconcealable envy. Li Qingshan followed the 9-colored deer out of Wanxiang City and arrived at a small island 1,000 miles away. The island was covered in luxuriant grass and dense green. Birds flew in the sky and it was full of vitality. It was indeed a beautiful place. However, as Li Qingshan looked around, he didn't see any decent lingji or immortal herbs. "This is the 100 Herb Garden?" "Not yet." As Ruan Yarozhu spoke, the 9-colored deer descended from the sky and landed on the small island. Li Qingshan immediately felt that this small island wasn't normal. The density of the spiritual energy was abnormally dense, almost as dense as the Chuo Dragon's cave. The island was covered in layers of formations that were invisible. It was like an inescapable net, and the security was no less than that of Wanxiang City. If not for Ruan Yarozhu leading the way, he definitely wouldn't be able to take a step on this island. "Kid, you're really lucky. It's all because you helped us earn so many bookmarks." The 9-colored deer slowed down and followed the small path in the forest to a picturesque place. On the vast expanse of green grass, there was an arched door made of green vines. There were even flowers blooming on the door. Under the morning light, it was like a fairy tale world. The 9-colored deer jumped and disappeared into the arched door. Waves of colorful ripples spread out from the door like rainbows. Li Qingshan seemed to understand something and stepped into the arched door. In an instant, an incomparable world appeared in front of him. This was a heavenly grotto. The place wasn't big, only 1,000 miles in circumference. However, within this 1,000 miles, there were mountain ranges, deep valleys, and springs. There were also barren ice plains, swamps, and lakes, but they didn't seem messy at all. They were natural, as if they were in a painting, as if they were condensed from a complete world. Li Qingshan had seen a lot of things. As a man who was the god of the world, this wasn't all that surprising. However, there were countless exotic flowers and plants in this area, competing with each other in beauty under the bright sunlight. Or silently in the deep valley. Even though he did not know how to identify flowers and plants, he could easily tell that these flowers and trees were precious. The density of the spiritual energy here was beyond imagination. Even Hui Long's cave couldn't compare to it, and how big was Hui Long's cave? He immediately understood why this island was so heavily guarded, and why those people envied him. This place was probably more important to the nature sect than Tianju. The heavenly book was just afraid of being stolen, but it wasn't really a loss. Everything in the building was probably recorded in the old turtle's mind. Even if Tianju was burned down by someone, it wouldn't matter. However, if this place was stolen or destroyed, it probably wouldn't recover even after 100,000 years. If one wasn't a direct disciple, how many people were qualified to have a cave like Hui Long's? Ruan Yarozhu said she wanted to help him find a stable job. However, working here wouldn't just give him a stable job. Ruan Yarozhu smiled. "Welcome to the herb garden." "I really don't know what to say." Li Qingshan sighed. He had just received the unfettered heavenly book. He needed a lot of spiritual energy, and the environment here was too suitable for Qilin transformation. Ruan Yarozhu smiled. "No need to be so polite, work hard to repay me." Li Qingshan felt that she became much more lively after coming to the herb garden. He smiled. "Okay, speak. What do you need me to do? There's no need to rush. I can see that you're very tired. You should rest first." "Oh right, you've already received the heavenly book from Spirit Venerable Gui Hai, right?" "Yes." Ruan Yarozhu asked curiously, "What heavenly book?" "You don't have to say it if you don't want to. I'm cultivating the heavenly book of nature." Li Qingshan praised. "Tao imitates nature. It sounds very powerful." "It's not that powerful. According to Spirit Venerable, this heavenly book should be called the minor heavenly book of nature. It's still far from the true Tao of nature." It's just that it's good at taking care of these plants, so it was arranged to be in charge of the herb garden. Li Qingshan chuckled. That's such a coincidence. My heavenly book is only one word different from yours. Even the evaluation is about the same. Ruan Yaozhu's curiosity was piqued. She could no longer be gentle and considerate. She urged, quickly tell me what heavenly book you're cultivating. I'll tell you everything. At this stage of cultivation, a cultivation technique was no longer just a cultivation technique. It was a true path. Every heavenly book was a path, and it could almost represent everything about a cultivator, such as thoughts, abilities, temperaments, and so on. Senior sister, I'm cultivating the Heavenly Book of Freedom, or the Minor Heavenly Book of Freedom. Ruan Yaozhu was moved. Is it really fate? She blinked her eyes. I've never heard of such a heavenly book. Are you lying to me? Li Qingshan patted his chest and promised, I won't lie to you. I hope you can keep your promise. Ruan Yaozhu looked at him with a faint smile, which made Li Qingshan feel a little guilty. He said inwardly, I hope so. Ruan Yaozhu explained seriously, the Heavenly Book of Freedom must have something to do with the great world of freedom. I don't know how effective it is. It must be very different from my nature heavenly book. It's just a coincidence that one word is the same. Many heavenly books have similar evaluations from Spirit Venerable. Li Qingshan said, how can it not be effective? This heavenly tomes cost me a total of 805 green jade slips. If it weren't for senior brother Le Tien's financial assistance, who knows when I would have been able to obtain it. I really have to thank senior brother Le Tien. But I really don't know how you can win this bet. Ruan Yaozhu sighed slightly, then said seriously, if you need sapphire tags, I can lend them to you. But work and contribution have rules. I can give you more sapphire tags as a reward, but contribution is related to the whole nature sect's rules. Big is big, small is small. If you have it, you have it. No matter who it is, I won't show favoritism. Don't look down on me. I, Li Qingshan, am not a man who lives off women. Don't worry about me. I have a plan, and I'll make Le Tien lose everything. What do you mean by living off women? Who's worried about you? Chapter 1393. Ruan Yaozhu pouted. Li Qingshan's words were far too frivolous and flirtatious. No matter how good her temper was, she could not put up with it. If it were not for the fact that his eyes were clear and devoid of any evil thoughts, she would have chased him out of the 100 herb garden immediately. Li Qingshan laughed aloud. He did not mind at all. He was no longer the inexperienced Li Qingshan who would fall in love at first sight when he saw a beauty. Actually, he was not lustful at all. He was just used to joking around. He had always been good at mocking and had a good mouth. Now, he was complacent and did not know how to restrain himself. Suddenly, he felt a pain in his chest. He was thrown into the air by the 9-colored deer. Li Qingshan flipped in the air and rubbed his chest. He was not angry. He asked, why did you hit me? There was actually no room for her to dodge. She really had undergone the 5th heavenly tribulation. The 9-colored deer was surprised too. Originally, it wanted to teach him a small lesson, but he was actually unscathed. His body really was tough. It raised its antlers proudly. Nothing good comes out of a filthy mouth. Ruan Yaozhu said, Junior brother Li, don't be so rude in the future. Li Qingshan rubbed his head. I know. Ruan Yaozhu could not bear to blame him. She thought, he doesn't have any evil thoughts. I've been thinking too much. She pointed at him and asked, do you see that hill? Li Qingshan nodded. The hill was not particularly tall. It made him think of Crouching Ox Hill. It just happened to be in the center of the 100 herb garden. There were not a lot of flowers and plants on it. There was only a single towering tree. The leaves were all faint gold, forming a golden canopy. He could tell with a single glance that it was something extraordinary. He could not help but ask, what tree is that? That's a body tree with golden leaves. It can calm the mind and inspire inspiration. It's most beneficial for cultivation. That's where I usually rest. You can rest under that tree. When Ruan Yarozhu reached there, she also felt that it was rather strange. That's not a good idea. Li Qingshan was not a reckless person. That seemed to be a place for a man and a woman. If they were alone, then so be it, but there just happened to be many cultivators working in the 100 Herb Garden. From the moment he entered, many gazes landed on him. He owed Ruan Yarozhu. He didn't want to hurt her reputation. Ruan Yarozhu angrily said, "What's not good about it? Whenever martial brothers and sisters come to visit, I always receive them there." She also felt that she was trying to cover something up. "I'm going to patrol. If you don't want to go, then forget it." Riding on the 9-colored deer, he soared into the sky. Li Qingshan shook his head and climbed up the hill. When he arrived under the golden leaf body tree, he saw that the thick tree trunk was made up of many intertwined branches. It looked like a banyan tree. There was a bamboo mat under the tree and a small table with a tea set on it. The bamboo mat was as green as new, the small table was as red as a heavy date, and the tea set was like cracked ice. It was extremely simple and elegant. The thin shade of the tree was actually suffused with a faint golden color, swaying along with the breeze. It flickered with millions of specks of golden light. Li Qingshan came under the tree and immediately felt his mind clear up. His head no longer hurt, and even his divine sense became sharper. He sat down cross-legged casually. He wasn't in a hurry to cultivate, so he first sorted out his experiences after coming to the mortal realm, and then he gradually felt sleepy and yawned loudly. He smiled in realization. This feeling was something he hadn't felt for a long time, so he simply lay down on the cool bamboo mat and fell asleep. Ruan Yarozhu patrolled around the 100 Herb Garden and dealt with some trivial matters. She felt slightly uneasy. Sigh, he's actually sleeping, really. The 9-colored deer looked back at the golden leaf body tree and said, "Blockhead, oh blockhead, you're inviting a wolf into the house." Ruan Yarozhu smiled and said, "Didn't you say that he's been a good person since he was young and can't even bear to step on ants? That's exactly why it's so bad. Regardless of whether he's a good person or not, he's still a man. This kid is obviously a playboy and a playboy. You have to be wary of him in the future to avoid a disaster of love." Ruan Yarozhu blushed and said, "What are you talking about? I just don't want him to lose to senior brother Letian. That's 2,000 green jade lots, how can he afford to lose?" The 9-colored deer said, "This is too scary. You've known Letian for more than 1,000 years, but you've only known this kid for less than 10 days. Could it be that you've been bewitched? Could it be that this kid has the bloodline of the 9-tailed fox?" Ruan Yarozhu was slightly stunned. Everything was so logical that she didn't think too deeply about the reason behind it. Perhaps she was moved by the Chilean's benevolence, or perhaps she didn't want to see a good person fall into a hopeless situation, or perhaps she wanted to take a gamble with Letian who had never listened to her for the past 1,000 years. It was difficult to distinguish all the reasons, but there was no need to care so much. "Jua, thank you for your reminder, but I'm wholeheartedly cultivating, so how can I fall into the trap of love? If junior brother Li really has other intentions, please help me chase him out of the 100 Herb Garden. If he doesn't have other intentions, do you think I'm that unreserved? Okay, I'll help you keep an eye on him. With my blockhead's character and appearance, I don't believe that he won't be tempted. You deserve a beating." Li Qingshan was in a deep sleep and still didn't know that he had been targeted. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. He had just stepped into the 6 paths of reincarnation and was preparing to face demon god Chungchi. He was in high spirits and his fighting spirit was high, so how could he have the mood to be in the mood for romance? Furthermore, she was so nice to him, so how could he have thoughts of sleeping with her and ruin her cultivation? This was not in line with his principle of revenge must be repaid. Although he was asleep, there was still a trace of consciousness left in his mind, and he cast it into the 5 continents world, from the perspective of the world god, the vast ocean, the various continents, humans, ghosts, and demons were like a magnificent painting unfolding in front of his eyes. Although it wasn't as exquisite as the 100 Herb Garden, it was truly a world that belonged to him. The key to winning this bet was here. Li Qingshan knew himself well. Although he was known as a novelist, he didn't have any talent in writing novels. He could only copy a few books, but it wasn't a long-term plan. However, books were written by people, and even if he didn't have the talent, it didn't mean that others didn't. There were hundreds of millions of people in the 5 continents world, and there was a huge time difference with the mortal realm. He could organize tens of thousands of people to write, and it would be impossible for him to gain nothing. As long as there was a 1%, or even a 1,000th chance of success, it would mean an endless supply of contribution points and bookmarks. Even if Letienne used up all his schemes, he wouldn't have thought that he would have a world of his own, and that his thoughts could enter and leave it freely. The world itself couldn't directly provide any cultivation resources, but as long as it was used properly, its value was beyond imagination. Perhaps this was what Shualong wanted to do but didn't manage to do. Gui Hai Lingzuan used the rules of the entire myriad appearance sect to satisfy his little hobby, while Li Qingshan could use his identity as the world god to make the entire world assist him in his cultivation. This was the power and prestige of a cultivator. As for winning this small bet, it was just something he did in passing, and he didn't really care about it. 30 years was still a long time, and if it didn't work out, he could still renege on the debt. The most important thing now was to obtain a decent abode of immortals. Ruan Yaozhu could be considered a kind master, but although the 100 herb garden was good, and no matter how wonderful the body tree was, he was still living under someone else's roof, and it wasn't a place for a real man to love for a long time. To be continued. Chapter 1394. However, while the idea was wonderful, he still needed to think about how it would work. He couldn't just send down an oracle from the heavens and summon everyone to write novels, right? There had to be someone in charge of organizing people, spreading the news, establishing a complete system, and ensuring its normal operation. With a thought, he already had a suitable candidate. He then descended into a courtyard. Under the large apricot tree, the moonlight flowed like water and the shadows of the tree swayed. The former king of Southern Yu, Qian Lingji, was playing chess with someone. Southern Yu no longer existed, he was now the human king of the new continent. Opposite the chessboard was a banyan tree in a potted plant. Its roots were thick and strong, its aerial roots formed the shape of a palm, holding a black chess piece and landing it on the chessboard. Qian Lingji sighed. I didn't expect that after going through such a disaster, fellow Daoist's chess skills did not deteriorate, but improved instead. The banyan tree king said bluntly, it's because you've been playing too stinky. Qian Lingji smiled and sighed, you wouldn't have said that in the past. The banyan tree king said, the past is the past, the present is the present. Let's play another game. Qian Lingji suddenly turned around and saw a faint silhouette in the watery moonlight, condensing into Li Qingshan's appearance. He cupped his fists, fellow Taoists, it's been a long time. Qian Lingji hurriedly stood up to welcome them, casually brushing the chessboard away, and jokingly said, Supreme Deity, what brings you here? I have something to ask of you, let me explain it slowly. As a result, Li Qingshan told him everything about the myriad phenomenon sect's spirit sovereign Gui Hai. He even hid nothing about his bet with Letienne. Qian Lingji said, I didn't expect the human realm to be so treacherous. Fellow Daoist, don't worry, leave this to me. I won't let Letienne get too full of himself. The banyan tree king said, I have nothing better to do and was looking for something to do, so I'll lend you a hand. That's great. Li Qingshan smiled. One of them was from the royal family, while the other was the king of the diamonds. They were the best at organizing, so it would be easy to leave this matter to them. Many thanks. When this is done, I'll definitely reward you according to your contributions, so that you won't work for nothing. It's just a small matter. There's no need to thank me. However, I still have one more thing. When will this 5 continents world become bigger? Qian Lingji was also close to the 4th heavenly tribulation. This was undoubtedly what he was most concerned about. Li Qingshan closed his eyes and sensed for a moment. He saw a star gradually growing bigger in the vast void. The void-swallowing beast had already traveled very far. He opened his eyes again. Soon. This also meant that he had to remove the sky-climbing vine from the human realm before Deep Blue Lil Fatty arrived at the new world. However, if he did that, Little and the others would be in danger, and their path of retreat would be cut off. So before that, He had to find a new cave and bring them over. Qian Lingji said, "Then I'm relieved. There is a school of novels in the 9 states, so this matter is not without reason, but it still needs some time to plan. Yes, time passes quickly in the mortal realm. I can wait. I'm originally a disciple of the school of novels, otherwise, I wouldn't have thought of this. If you need any help, just let me know. Don't worry, I won't disappoint you." Li Qingshan discussed with them a little more about how to handle this matter before taking his leave. Just as Qian Lingji was in thought, the Banyan Tree King had already restored the chessboard that had been messed up. He said, "It's your turn." Qian Lingji revealed a helpless expression and shook his head. "Tree King, oh Tree King. You weren't like this before. It's like you've become a different tree. Hurry up. Once I beat you, we'll get to work on this." Li Qingshan slowly woke up under the golden-leafed body tree. He stretched. A gentle breeze blew past, and the golden leaves rustled. Ruan Yarozhu was nowhere to be seen. He did not get up. Instead, he rested his head on his arms and crossed his legs. He placed the jade slip that recorded the heavenly tome of freedom between his eyebrows and began to comprehend it. Perhaps it really was because their personalities were compatible, but the process of comprehension was extremely smooth. The cultivation method was extensive, profound, and wondrous, but it could not stop him from having the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine as his foundation, the spirit turtle transformation's ability to project, and the ape demon transformation's freedom of movement. All of these served as great assistance to him. 2 layers of light lit up on him at the same time. At first, they suppressed one another before gradually merging together, condensing into a profound light that changed unpredictably. It enveloped Li Qingshan, reflecting his face. At times, it was vicious and terrifying like a demon, and at other times, it was gentle like a woman. Afterwards, the 2 faces gradually merged together, and the profound light gradually receded into his dantian. He had only comprehended 20 to 30% of it, but he had already harmonized the Extreme King's records of scriptures and the Extreme King's records of world destruction. He gathered the thoughts of life and death before transforming them into the heavenly tome of freedom. Li Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the shattered sunlight flickering through the golden crown of the tree. He muttered to himself, "Only the savior of the world has the right to destroy the world. Only the destroyer of the world has the power to save the world." With a boom, the profound light froze. A half-transparent infant appeared in Li Qingshan's dantian. It was extremely similar to Li Qingshan in appearance. It was the soul nascence that all great cultivators possessed. Originally, he thought it would be impossible for him to refine a soul nascence now that he had embarked on the demonic path. He never thought the heavenly tome of freedom would be so impressive, actually allowing him to reverse his demon heart and refine a soul nascence. He truly was worthy of being the great freedom demon lord. The path of the great freedom was not a simple demonic path. It completely surpassed the regular concepts of good and evil, establishing a great path that everyone yearned for. The Buddha said, "Everyone can become a Buddha," which also meant, everyone can become a demon. What everyone sought was freedom, to do as they pleased, to do as they pleased. Humans were probably much closer to demons than Buddhas. Could it be said that the great freedom demon lord understood the human heart better than the Buddha? Various demonic thoughts were born from the heart. A single misstep could become a demonic obstacle. If mortals wanted to succeed, they needed to be careful, to bow, to reflect, and to control themselves. Once they made a mistake, their entire life would be wasted, and they might even lose their lives. Moreover, it was a huge matter like cultivation. Terrifying power was contained within the body, and the mind was constantly changing. Who dared to be free and do as they pleased? If they let all kinds of thoughts run wild, a moment of carelessness would lead to chi deviation, and their souls would scatter. They wouldn't even be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Therefore, this path was what everyone yearned for, and everyone yearned for it. Instead, it was even more difficult than the strict Buddhist path of cultivation. Very few people could walk this path. Li Qingshan rubbed his belly. "It's like I'm pregnant, haha." He couldn't help but laugh proudly at this exquisite metaphor. You've already comprehended the heavenly tome of freedom. Ruan Yarozhu sensed the commotion and came over to take a look. The heavenly tome of all nature was extremely profound. Back then, she had spent several years comprehending the heavenly tome of nature, which was already considered very fast. He only slept under the tree for a while, and when he woke up, it only took him 10 minutes to transform his cultivation into a heavenly tome. Could it be that he was really a rare genius in cultivation? This was not only because Li Qingshan had the foundation of the Extreme Emperor's record of world destruction and the Extreme Emperor's record of the world, as well as the powerful assistance of the 9 transformations of the demonic and celestial. It wasn't just because their hearts and natures were compatible. Although the heavenly tome of freedom was difficult and dangerous, it also had one advantage, and that was its speed. It was so fast that even the cultivator himself felt afraid, so fast that he could lose control at any time and become chi deviation. Chapter 1395. Ruan Yarozhu said, "Junior martial brother, do you know the cloning technique?" "This. I guess I know a thing or two. Take this fractal shadow form technique and comprehend it. With your comprehension, you should be able to grasp it quickly." Nine-colored deer said, "This phantasm technique needs to be exchanged with a green jade lot in the sky." Li Qingshan smiled and accepted it calmly. He closed his eyes and began to comprehend. Ruan Yarozhu looked at him with great interest. She did not expect that he would immediately start to comprehend it. Although this fractal shadowization technique was only a Dao technique, it was not easy for a layman to master it freely. After a while, Li Qingshan opened his eyes. His nascent soul flashed, and a faint silhouette emerged from his body. It was like an invisible shadow, full of qi. Ruan Yarozhu was surprised. "You really didn't know the cloning technique before?" "I know a thing or two, just a thing or two." Li Qingshan answered vaguely. Although moon reflection wasn't a spell but an innate ability, it was far beyond the reach of this phantasm technique. "This clone is really weak. I'm afraid it won't be able to do any hard work. It's better not to have it." He sensed that this shadow clone couldn't be too far away from him and was very weak. It didn't even have 1% of his strength. This was to be expected. Although the myriad sect spells were mysterious, this was after all the human world. All spells were restricted by the laws of heaven and earth. You don't know, but most of the work in the herb garden doesn't require a lot of power, but it requires exquisite cooperation. Ruan Yarozhu smiled and took out a jade scroll. "This is some of my experiences. You'll understand after reading it." Nine-colored deer sighed, "Hey, soft wood, you're really generous, kid. If it wasn't for the fact that you helped us win, I wouldn't have let you see this jade scroll for nothing. I understand now. Every spirit herb has a different spirituality and radiates different qi. They affect each other and even restrain each other. It contains the principle of the 5 elements reinforcing and restraining each other. The Tao of yin and yang's changes requires a deep understanding of the laws involved and the overall situation at all times to be able to do this job well." Li Qingshan skimmed through it and understood. Although the spirit qi in this 100 herb garden was dense, the spirit herbs planted were too densely packed after all. The green dragon bamboo hated metal the most, but the sharp toothgrass needed to be fertilized with iron slag. The golden leaf body tree beside him had roots that covered the entire hill. There was no room for any other plants to grow. As for some plants, they couldn't get close to humans, so they had to use their clones. Furthermore, many plants and vegetation are extremely dangerous, even to cultivators. If they aren't careful and are poisoned, their lives will be in danger. I don't know how many doppelgangers you can create. This will determine the efficiency of your job, as well as your pay. Ruan Yarozhu saw that he had comprehended the fractal shadow technique so quickly. He wanted to test his methods. "Let me try." Li Qingshan's interest was also piqued. He closed his eyes again. Activating his nascent soul, his mind divided into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8, and so on and so forth. He used the fractal shadow technique. Ruan Yarozhu saw shadows walk out from Li Qingshan's body. In a short while, there were more than 100 shadows under the tree. She was also surprised. Ordinary nascent soul cultivators could create 12 to 20 doppelgangers. That was already a lot. She thought, the great freedom heavenly demon has always been known for its transformations. Could it be that the heavenly book of freedom has a special effect on this technique? Senior Marshal Sister, are there enough doppelgangers? Li Qingshan didn't think that there was anything great about it. These shadow doppelgangers were all weak. Even if they were added together, they wouldn't be as strong as a mirror doppelganger. They could only be used for farm work. Of course there are more doppelgangers. The more doppelgangers you have, the more spirit herbs you can take care of. But can you control so many doppelgangers? There doesn't seem to be a problem. With a thought from Li Qingshan, all of the shadow doppelgangers moved. First, they lined up neatly like an army. Then, they stacked on top of each other until they reached the depths of the tree. In the end, they scattered again. It was a mess. Ruan Yarozhu originally thought that he couldn't control them, but she saw these doppelgangers. Some were hunched like old men, some were arrogant like generals. They imitated the appearance of all living beings and had a lot of fun. She couldn't help but sigh at the vastness of the world. There really were many unparalleled geniuses. However, Li Qingshan said, I've only just grasped the basics of the heavenly book of freedom. My comprehension of this technique isn't too deep either. Otherwise, I would be able to create even more doppelgangers. Furthermore, the spirit turtle transformation was also suppressed to the 4th layer. Otherwise, the number and agility of the doppelgangers would be even greater. I'll take you to get the tools. Ruan Yarozhu shook her head. She no longer doubted whether he had the ability to do this job well. Even she did not have this ability when she was at the same cultivation realm back then. He was basically sent by the heavens to help him take care of the 100 herb garden. They arrived in a valley. There were many large storehouses here. Along the way, Ruan Yarozhu rode the deer in front while Li Qingshan walked behind her. There were over 100 shadow doppelgangers following behind them. It was like they were on a parade, attracting the attention of everyone. Ruan Yarozhu thought about it and opened a storehouse. There were not farming tools like hoes and scissors inside, but puppets arranged neatly. Some were large, some were small, some were metal, some were wood. They all varied in appearance. There were some special spiritual herbs that even the doppelgangers were unable to approach. They needed special puppets. Can you split your consciousness and control some puppets? What's so difficult about that? Li Qingshan smiled. In that instant, his soul sense spread out, and half of the puppets in the storehouse actually began to move. However, their movements were rather stiff, not as smooth as when he controlled the shadow doppelgangers. This caused Ruan Yarozhu to be incomparably shocked. She hurriedly said, all right. There's no need for so much. I already know your level. I can arrange a job for you. Li Qingshan also heaved a sigh of relief. This was also the limit for him. However, he still felt somewhat dissatisfied. There was always a feeling of emptiness, as if he had only used 40 to 50% of his strength, or even 2 to 3% of it. Regardless of whether it was the Book of Freedom or the Chilean longevity strategy, they were only at the entry level. In fact, they couldn't even be considered entry level. This dragged down the other fiend god transformations by a level. The key was that he had not undergone the 4th heavenly tribulation. He was clearly only one step away, yet he was stuck here. However, he was not in a hurry. He had already vaguely seen a glimmer of hope. This 100 herb garden was very suitable for cultivating the Chilean transformation, and the Book of Freedom was also deeply in line with his temperament. No matter which one he broke through, he would undergo the 4th heavenly tribulation. And once he crossed this step, the sea and the sky would be wide open, and his cultivation would increase by leaps and bounds. This was already the final dormancy. That glimmer of hope was precisely from the opened door of the path of the 9 heavens. In the vast sea and sky, there would definitely be storms and thunder. When he thought that in the future, he might not have the opportunity to stay in such a beautiful garden and enjoy such peaceful and quiet time. Even he felt a little emotional. Senior sister. I will remember your kindness. Li Qingshan's eyes were burning. Ruan Yaroju was stunned for a moment. That gaze was full of cherishing, but it had nothing to do with love. It gave her a strange feeling. Although he was right in front of her, she had a feeling that she could not touch him, as if he could fly away at any time. As long as you work hard, it will be considered as repaying me. P.S. I've been working hard these few days. Every day, I walked down from the 16th floor and climbed back up. In between, I skipped 2,000 times. My arms seem to have improved a little. Nothing can stop us, right? This month, I won't write a speech asking for votes. Everyone, vote as you see fit. Finally, I'll send the first sentence of a novel that I like very much. Kilimanjaro is a mountain with an altitude of 19,710 feet. It is covered with snow all year round. It is said to be the highest mountain in Africa. The West High Peak is called the Masai's Ochioyi, or God's Temple. Near the West High Peak, there is the already dried and frozen corpse of a leopard. No one has ever explained what the leopard was looking for in such a cold place. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.